Good morning, and welcome to LPC's public hearing and public meeting of June 23rd, 2026. We'll begin by taking attendance, and I will turn to Mark Silberman to call the roll.
Chair Savage,
Here.
Vice Chair Master,
Here.
Commissioner Chen,
Yeah.
Commissioner Chu,
Here.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Here.
Commissioner Goldblum, Commissioner Quembe,
Here.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Here.
Commissioner Mann, Commissioner Wilder.
Okay, good morning again. Today's public hearing and public meeting is being held in person in LPC's hearing room on the second floor of 253 Broadway. It is also being held via Zoom and live streamed on YouTube for anyone who would like to participate remotely or watch the proceedings. Our agenda today includes a public meeting agenda for applications. Actually, a public meeting for rules that we are introducing today, and for work on designated properties that have already had a public hearing or for which we have already heard testimony and are back today with revisions in response to our comments at the hearing, and a public hearing agenda for new applications for work on designated properties. With that, I will turn it over to Corey Harala, Director of Preservation.
Thank you, Chair Savage. Good morning, everyone. We'll start today's Preservation Department public meeting agenda with meeting item number 1, a proposal to initiate rulemaking pursuant to the City Administrative Procedures Act. Proposed amendments to Chapter 2, 7, 11 of Title 63 of the Rules of the City of New York, consisting of amendments to existing rules, including amendments concerning restoration definitions, awnings, windows and doors, garages, skylights, dormers, decks, pergolas and balconies, additions in rear yards and courts, light wells and hatches and areaway fences, ironwork, garbage enclosures, barrier-free access, sidewalks, louvers, and the revocation of expedited certificates of no effect, as well as administrative enforcement, and renaming Section 216 and incorporating new rules to include major structural work. Okay, so today the staff, including myself, Leanne Pollock, and Mark Silberman, will be presenting a broad overview of some proposed rules and amendments that we're asking you all to calendar in advance of a future public hearing. As a continuation of the CAPA process we are kicking off today, we will publish the proposed rules for commissioners and the public to review well in advance of that public hearing, and we will go into greater detail on each item during that future public hearing presentation. Next. I'll offer a few points on the purpose and goals of rulemaking. Rules play an important role in the agency's mission to protect our historic buildings by ensuring our regulation is as efficient as possible, as well as in our equity framework by promoting transparency into our regulatory process. These proposed rules support the administration's broader goals of housing creation with a focus on ADUs and office to residential conversions by streamlining regulatory review. By making it clear what criteria are being applied and therefore what application materials are needed, rules promote transparency and predictability for building owners and other interested stakeholders. Finally, some of these rules address quality of life issues such as providing for amenities in rear yards or at rear facades to enjoy the outdoors, to lessen the amount of time scaffolding may be up on a building, or to accommodate containerization or safety upgrades in front yards and areaways where private property interacts with public space, just to name a few. Next. In developing these proposed rules amendments, we see them fitting into a few thematic categories: work that supports housing creation, work that improves quality of life and safety, codifying routine commission approvals and clarifying current staff practices, and other miscellaneous updates. We are highlighting the housing creation category with the icon shown here throughout the presentation. Note that some of these rules overlap one or more categories. We'll now begin following the general order of the rules as currently organized. Next. Section 211, that's restoration, is proposed to be amended in the replacement of historic materials section to add a new definition for, quote, cladding field relating to use of substitute materials for terracotta and natural stone, and to allow greater quantities of substitute materials beyond, quote, limited quantities for projecting features like balconies and cornices with structural implications at all buildings above the 6th floor. This fits in the themes of clarifying staff practices and also routine commission approvals. Additionally, this section is amended to recognize garages and utilitarian structures in rear yards as having all secondary facades for the purposes of using substitute materials more expansively with limited exceptions. And that's the themes of housing creation and also just practical. Next.
Next is section 212, which is our section for storefronts and awnings, proposing to amend that in the awning category to allow two additional items. First, to allow greater flexibility for the length and the location of awnings that are installed on rear facades and non-visible facades to extend over and past window openings. Second, to allow awnings without signage to be installed at the upper floors of buildings that include typical window openings, not necessarily display windows or storefronts, but where the use is still commercial. This is similar to what's already permitted for awnings at upper floor residential windows. Both of these aim to clarify current staff practices.
Right, windows and doors, that's current section 214. This is proposed to be amended regarding various changes to rules regulating windows and doors and their openings, and a new subsection, including adding an entirely new section for skylights on sloped roofs and adding existing definitions from other chapters for, quote, design roofs and, quote, significant historic roofing materials related to skylight installations. And this aims to promote housing creation. Allowing lowering of basement windows at primary facades to address light and air requirements for residential occupancy, again, housing creation. Allowing options for limited modifications to garage door openings and new infill to recall configuration and finish of garage doors. Allowing metal or fiberglass windows at large individual landmarks more than 6 stories in height for replacement of non-special wood windows. This falls under routine commission approvals. And allowing changing the operation of windows. This is generally for the passive house style simulated double hung windows at large individual landmarks more than 6 stories in height, meeting certain criteria. Commissioners and staff have recently discussed also allowing casement only operation of the lower sash as another possible option. And again, this fits under routine commission approvals and housing creation. Next. Continuing with windows and doors, allowing substitute materials for multi-light windows at primary facades, specifically aluminum clad wood and fiberglass clad wood at small buildings in historic districts for replacement of non-special wood windows. This is following routine commission approvals. Allowing window modifications to match other existing windows at the top floor of a rear facade in limited circumstances. Clarifying quantitative criteria for adding new window openings at visible secondary facades of small residential buildings. This is clarifying staff practices. And allowing an option for changing the operation of a pivot window to include fixed as the operation or no operation at all buildings. And again, that's routine commission approvals, also sometimes under housing creation. Next. Additions is next. This is currently section 215. This is proposed to be amended regarding various changes to rules regulating additions, including expanding courtyard additions to include enclosing central courts entirely where they have no significant features. This falls under routine approvals and housing creation. Expanding rear yard additions to make non-visible one-story ground level additions up to 15 feet deep, not subject to contextual requirements. That would be such as majority of houses having to have an extension or an addition, and regardless of predominant depth. This falls under routine approvals and housing creation. And relatedly, excluding one-story additions from cumulative effect requirements, meaning a rooftop addition could still qualify for staff level approval in conjunction with a one-story rear yard addition. Next. Also under additions, we're introducing a new section on decks, pergolas, and balconies. For decks, this really means increased size and more specificity regarding visibility and materials. Again, that's for the decks, and an entirely new rule section for pergolas and balconies. And this is codifying staff practices and/or routine commission approvals, also quality of life. And then further expanding the installation of dormers on more types of sloped roofs, including with minimal visibility in some cases, and to address light and air issues. This falls under housing creation. Next. Section 216, current section is excavation. This is proposed to be amended by renaming it, quote, excavation and major structural work, as well as reorganizing the section accordingly by creating a new subdivision for major structural work and clarifying what, quote, enhanced engineering review means and when this is needed as part of an application. Major structural work addresses removing, relocating, and replacing floors and load-bearing partitions and modifying party walls and rear facades. The existing excavation rules will remain with some updates. Reconstructing facades is cross-referenced to the restoration chapter where it's already addressed. All below-grade basement and cellar expansions and additions, both below houses and additions, and in the rear yard, provided there is a 5-foot setback, will be reviewed at staff level, but always with enhanced engineering review. Next.
Next, we're going to move into section 217, which covers front, side, and rear yards. This is proposed to be amended in 2 ways that would support providing additional light and air to basements for occupancy, addressing both quality of life and housing creation goals. These changes include adding a new section relating to the excavation of front areaways for installing light wells that meet certain dimensional and design criteria. This is related to the revisions in the window rules for modifying basement windows that Corey already mentioned earlier. And again, this supports housing creation. Next, the rules would be amended to allow for hatches within areaways to be replaced with glass skylights. This is both codifying staff practices, promoting quality of life, and also housing creation. The same rule section also includes revisions to address other quality of life and safety issues, including clarifying and expanding locations where garbage enclosures can be installed to include side alleys and in front of buildings, even if there's no typical defined areaway, and allowing that enclosures can be freestanding. This aligns with the goals of routine commission approvals, codifying staff practices, and also quality of life issues. Next, modifying the rules relating to the installation of ironwork at stoops and areaways to provide greater flexibility, including allowing simplified designs and in some cases substitute materials instead of only strict restoration of ironwork at stoops and areaways where there was ironwork present historically, but may not be there currently, and specifically allowing gates to be installed within openings and areaway fences. Again, this promotes quality of life, safety, routine commission approvals, and codifying staff practices. Also would be adding provisions for the installation of stoop gates at row houses on blocks where the commission has already approved a stoop gate. Promoting routine commission approvals and also quality of life and safety. And finally, permitting fences at the side yards of buildings to span across driveways in select circumstances. And this is, again, codifying current staff practices.
Right, for current section 218, that's barrier-free access. This is proposed to be amended regarding changes to rules regulating entrance alterations, ramps, and lifts, including updating all existing rules to account for work occurring at secondary facades and/or side and rear yards. This was an omission when the rule was originally created, so this is under the cleanup category. And cross-referencing the restoration in windows and door sections when repairs or replacement is required to do barrier-free access work, rather than just restating those same criteria in this section, also a cleanup.
Next is section 219, which covers sidewalks, is proposed to be amended to include additional historic districts that have been designated since the last rules update. 6 districts or portions of districts are being added to the list of those where sidewalks will continue to be regulated. Other revisions include specifically addressing the regulatory treatment of districts that feature ribbon sidewalks, as you see in this picture, and that these are a significant feature, and clarifying that in these cases, the location and the placement of the sidewalks relative to the planted area is significant and will be regulated and not necessarily the paving itself. This is clarifying staff practice. It's also a bit of a cleanup to incorporate the additional historic districts and quality of life. Finally, section 221 for HVAC includes one targeted rule revision specifically for large buildings that were historically apartments or hotels. This revision would allow for through window louvers to fill the height of an entire window opening, as you see in this picture, so long as it met certain design criteria, rather than the louver area being limited to just a portion of the window. This is promoting codification of routine commission approvals.
Commissioners Mark Silberman, I'm going to take the last slide here. There are 2 miscellaneous rule changes that are also included. The first involves amendments to the rules for revoking a permit. We are proposing to allow staff to immediately revoke an expedited certificate of no effect that was issued where the self-certification by the owner and architect is erroneous because the work clearly does not meet the requirements for issuance. Currently, we need to go through a process to do that, and given this is a self-certification, we think we can immediately revoke the permit. Second, we're proposing to make the rules correspond to our pandemic-era policy of serving warning letters and stop work orders by email where we have an email instead of by regular mail. And this falls under the bucket of codifying staff practices. Next slide, please. So finally, just a word about process for commissioners who are new to this. You're being asked to vote to calendar the proposed rules for a future public hearing. We will hold the hearing in September. The hearing and a full copy of the rules will be available in the city record and will be posted on our website and the city's NYC rules website at least 30 days in advance of that hearing. We encourage all interested public to review the proposed rules and submit testimony. All testimony will be made available to you. Staff will review the testimony and draft our responses to it and may suggest modifications to address issues raised in the testimony or issues raised by commissioners. The staff will present their responses and propose changes, if any, at a future public meeting. Ultimately, there will be a vote whether to adopt the proposed rules.
Great, thank you very much. Are there any questions? No? Okay. Well, not seeing any questions then. I think we can make a motion to calendar these proposed rules for a future public hearing. Commissioner Ginsburg, can you make?
So moved.
Vice Chair Master, could you second?
Second.
Okay, Mark, could you?
All in favor? No, we don't have to call for it.
We don't have to call. Oh, okay.
Just all in favor. We just need an all in favor.
Okay, all in favor. Sorry.
Aye.
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 Okay, any opposed? Okay, thank you. The motion passes. And we are going to move on to our second agenda item.
Next item is public meeting item number 2, LPC 26-02776, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 1217, Lot 1, 165 West 86th Street, the West Park Presbyterian Church, individual landmark. This is a Romanesque revival-style church complex designed by Henry Franklin Kilburn and built in 1889 to 1890, which incorporated an existing chapel designed by Leopold Eidlitz and built in 1883 to 85. The application is to demolish the building pursuant to Section 25-309B2 on the grounds of hardship. This was last presented at the public meeting of May 5th, 2026, and no action was taken at that time.
Commissioners, you've been considering the hardship application filed by the Administrative Commission for the West Park Presbyterian Church since the first public hearing on December 9th, 2025, followed by a public meeting on March 10th, where the applicant responded to the public testimony. This was followed by a public meeting on May 5th, where LPC's consultants, Frank Fortino of Metropolis, Don Friedman of Old Structures, and Keith Brennan of Weitzman presented. There's been a lot of focus on the history of the congregation's efforts to maintain the building, the scope of repairs necessary to address DOB violations and remove the sidewalk shed from the building, the viability of redevelopment schemes for the building, and whether the building can generate a reasonable return. Today, General Counsel Mark Silberman will discuss the third factor of the 4-part statutory hardship test. At the end of his presentation, unless you have a need for additional fact-finding, I will ask for a motion to close the record, and we will move toward our discussion in the near future. And with that, I will turn it over to Mark Silberman.
Thank you, Chair Savage. Let me make sure. There we go. Before I discuss the third factor, I wanted to remind everyone about the hardship application process and next steps. This slide shows the entire process and the timeframes for each step. First, the Commission has 90 days to act on an application unless an applicant gives us an extension. In the current application, that the church has agreed to allow the process to extend beyond the 90 days. The Commission will have to make it to determine whether the applicant has carried its burden of demonstrating a hardship. Second, if the Commission determines the applicant has carried its burden and demonstrated a hardship exists, it issues a preliminary determination of insufficient return. The commission then has 180 days to identify an alternative purchaser who will acquire the property on reasonably equivalent terms and conditions and preserve it. If a purchaser is found, the hardship application is denied. If no purchaser is identified, the commission can ask the mayor to acquire a protective interest in the property. The application is denied if the mayor agrees and the city proceeds with acquiring such an interest. If the mayor does not agree, the commission issues a notice to proceed, which allows the applicant to move forward with demolition. If the hardship is denied, the applicant has the option of appealing the decision to the Hardship Appeals Panel, a 5-member panel established with a new charter in 1989. The panel, however, is not currently constituted. Commissioners, as we've discussed many times, the Landmarks Law provides a 4-part statutory test for a nonprofit owner of a landmark seeking hardship relief from the requirements of the law. That test is, first, the owner has entered into a contract to sell or lease the property, subject to or contingent on the LPC issuing a certificate of appropriateness or a notice to proceed. Second, the existing property, if not exempt from real estate taxes, is incapable of earning a reasonable return. Third, the building is no longer adequate, suitable, or appropriate for carrying out the owner's original and current uses for the property. Finally, the purchaser seeks and intends in good faith to demolish the building immediately and build a new building on the site with reasonable promptness. I'm going to be discussing the third factor. Again, that is, the building is no longer adequate, suitable, or appropriate for carrying out the owner's original and current uses for the property. Looking closely at the criteria in this factor, it is important first to understand that the terms adequate, suitable, or appropriate are not further defined in the statute. However, I believe the everyday meanings of these words, as well as the Commission's interpretation of them in previous hardship applications, including an inquiry into both the physical and financial adequacy, suitability, and appropriateness of the building. Second, the inquiry is into whether the building remains suitable for continuing the current purposes to which the building is being used and the purposes it was used for when originally acquired, unless the applicant is no longer engaged in such purposes. Third, the inquiry is not formulaic or arithmetic like the reasonable return analysis in Factor 2, which looks at whether earned income equals or exceeds 6% of the assessed value. At this juncture, I want to mention the judicial hardship test because it is this test that provides insight into how the Commission has interpreted the meaning of the third factor's suitability test. As you will recall, the first factor of the 4 requires the owner to have entered into a contract to sell or lease the property, which is contingent on the Commission acting. The judicial test was created by courts to address the scenario not anticipated by the statute, where the nonprofit owner was not selling or leasing the property, but intended to do the work itself. The judicial test is relevant to our discussion because the Commission has interpreted the judicial test to be essentially the same as the third and fourth factors of the statutory hardship test. The judicial tests ask whether maintenance of the landmark either physically or financially prevents or seriously interferes with carrying out the charitable purpose. It was enunciated in 1968 in the Snug Harbor case. This case involved Sailor Snug Harbor on Staten Island, a group of Greek Revival individual landmarks built in the early to middle 19th century. The buildings were used to provide housing and other services to retired seamen. And in the 1960s, the nonprofit that owned and operated them felt they were no longer adequate and wanted to replace the historic buildings with contemporary, up-to-date facilities. The Commission denied their certificate of appropriateness request to demolish the buildings, and the organization sued, claiming in part that the absence of a hardship provision that covered this situation rendered the Landmarks Law unconstitutional. The court disagreed, noting it could provide the relief sought and enunciated the judicial test. The court sent the case back to the lower court to resolve various what it called subsidiary questions, such as, does preservation of the building seriously interfere with use of the property? Are the buildings capable of conversion to useful purpose without excessive cost? Does the cost of maintaining the buildings without use entail serious expenditure? The court stressed that this was a fact-sensitive inquiry in light of the purposes and resources of the nonprofit. Note that answers to none of these questions was necessarily determinable of the outcome. Rather, there was to be an in-depth, holistic analysis of the facts and circumstances. There was no final decision in that case, as the city ended up purchasing the property a few years later. Thus, based on the Commission's past statements, the third factor involves an inquiry into the specific economic situation of the property owner. Unlike the reasonable return analysis, which applies an economic formula and looks at both the owner's economic return during a test year and an abstract market analysis of the potential to increase income if necessary, the economic analysis in the third factor isn't limited to earned income or percentage return, but looks at financial resources and actions like capital campaigns, grants, and fundraising to address financial concerns. The analysis in the St. Bartholomew statutory hardship case is illustrative of how the Commission has applied the third factor. In St. Bart's, the church claimed the existing community house could no longer accommodate its growing charitable uses, and the building couldn't be expanded. The church partnered with a developer who proposed to demolish the community house and build a high-rise with new church facilities in the bottom. The Commission denied the hardship, finding the historic building could be appropriately expanded and reconfigured, and that the church hadn't demonstrated it couldn't raise sufficient funds to pay for the expansion. In reaching a conclusion about the financial situation, the Commission noted the church had an endowment, an investment account, hadn't engaged in a capital campaign or sought grants, nor had it tried to sell its development rights. Applying this analysis, is the building physically suitable for carrying out the church's historic purposes? Put another way, does the building physically prevent or seriously interfere with carrying out its charitable purposes? The first step is to determine the purposes to which the building is being used and the purposes it was being used when acquired. The church was built by the congregation for the purpose of religious worship. While the record doesn't contain information about other historic or purposes to which the building was put, the applicant is very proud of its history of social activism and community work, especially during the 1970s into the 2000s. Are those uses ongoing, and can the building still be used for those purposes? The applicant argues that it does not because the building is too big and too expensive to maintain. The opponents argue it can and is, pointing out that the congregation can still worship at the building, even though it chooses not to, and has had and continues to hold events in the building. It also notes the building continues to be a center for community activity as it has been used historically. Next, is the building financially suitable for carrying out the congregation's purposes? Put another way, does maintenance of the landmark financially prevent or seriously interfere with carrying out the charitable purposes? St. Bart's asks whether the financial issues can be addressed through prudent financial management. As discussed before, in that application, the Commission found no hardship after considering all of the financial resources available to the church, an investment fund and an endowment worth millions, the possibility of a capital campaign, grants and donations, and the possible sale of TDRs. Applying that analysis to the current situation, we can look at the church's financial resources and what it has tried to do in the past to address this issue. While not directly relevant to the analysis, you can look at the congregation's situation just prior to designation, as well as its efforts since designations. Factors include promises by third parties to assist the congregation. What did it do to try to maintain the building, including selling an apartment and its clergy's townhome, efforts to partner and lease the property, efforts to fundraise and obtain grants, and ultimately its decision to create the center and lease the building to it in 2018. There are two significant questions that you'll have to resolve in reaching a decision on whether the applicant has satisfied the third factor. First, how should one consider the congregation's actions surrounding the creation of the center and its ultimate decision to end the lease and seek a hardship? Second, what is the relevance of the church's transferable development rights to this analysis? Let's consider the first question. St. Bart's asks whether the applicant has engaged in prudent financial planning in an effort to raise funds necessary to address the financial issues. You should review the record to determine what the congregation did to try and raise funds to repair and restore the building. After a few years of trying, in 2016 to 17, it helped create the center, and in 2018 leased the entire building to the center, receiving only about $30,000 in annual rent in return. That lease had an option for another 5-year term. In May 2020, the congregation decided the situation wasn't working out and voted to sell the property, and in 2021 entered into a contract with Alchemy. The hardship was filed in April 2022, with the initial lease term with the center expiring in December of that year. Given the center's performance up to that point, was that decision reasonable? The congregation had to withdraw the application in January 2024 to address the lease litigation with the center, which it should be noted the congregation won at every court level. By the time it refiled the hardship in 2025, the center was no longer a tenant, but was doing better. It appears to have had something like $1.3 million in the bank and $1 million more in pledges and grants, all of which, however, were contingent on there being a new acceptable lease between the congregation and the center. What is the relevance of this change in the circumstances? How should this factor be factored into the analysis? That is a determination you will need to make. The second question concerns the church's transferable development rights, or TDRs. The church property has approximately 85,000 excess development rights that could be transferred to nearby receiving sites pursuant to special provisions in the zoning resolution available to individual landmarks. The applicant has not tried to sell them. There is substantial contrasting testimony about the viability of potential receiving sites. Finally, there's the question of whether prior commission hardship decisions require an applicant to actively market these rights. The zoning resolution has for decades included provisions that allow individual landmarks to transfer their excess development rights further than non-designated property. Prior to passage of the City of Yes for Housing Opportunity in December 2024, the principal mechanism used by individual landmarks to transfer TDRs was Section 7479. The most significant provision allowed the transfer directly across a street or intersection from the lot with the landmark. That transfer area is shown in the middle shade of green in the graphic, with the West Park Church, obviously the darkest green in the star. There have been very few 7479 transfers, however, because the receiving area was still very small and it required a full ULURP process, which is expensive, time-consuming, and ultimately uncertain. After December 2024, the zoning resolution was changed to streamline the process and broaden the transfer area and make the outcome more certain. It allows transfers anywhere on the tax block and directly across the street and kitty corner from the tax block. That area is shown in the light and middle shades of green on the graphic. You should also note that many of the potential receiving sites are within the adjacent Upper West Side Central Park West Historic District, and therefore the viability of TDRs on those sites is further inhibited. 7542 allows receiving sites to accept up to 20% or more floor area than allowed as of right in most cases, and up to 30% for receiving sites in high-density districts. The record is clear the church has never actively tried to market its TDRs pursuant to 7479 prior to December 2024, or pursuant to 7542 in the 9 months after passage of City of Yes and prior to filing the hardship application in September of 2025. You have heard extensive conflicting expert testimony about the viability of the receiving sites. There's no known active development site within the transfer area. Thus, the question concerns the likelihood of a transfer in the foreseeable future. The parties have considered about 24 potential receiving sites that could theoretically accommodate some portion of the church's TDRs. The applicant argues the potential receiving sites are not viable due to physical constraints, small sites or an ability to use only a small amount of TDRs, ownership constraints, the need to assemble a development site from multiple sites, and/or occupancy constraints. They are co-ops or have rent-regulated tenants that make assembling or expansion procedurally difficult and, even if possible, time-consuming. And that the most unlikely sites are small residential sites, and therefore there would have to be multiple transfers within a relatively short amount of time to have a meaningful impact on the hardship analysis. The opponents argue that TDRs are viable because 7542 has significantly streamlined the process to make it easier, faster, and cheaper to transfer TDRs, that the constraints identified by the applicant aren't insurmountable, and there are examples where TDRs have been used on lots with such constraints, and ultimately one won't know without actively marketing the TDRs. Finally, the opposition argues that the commission precedent requires a hardship applicant to sell their TDRs or to try to sell their TDRs, citing primarily the Stahl for-profit hardship test and the St. Bart's decision. In both instances, the commission's decision denying the hardship noted the applicant had not tried to sell their TDRs, and in Stahl, the decision notes that the value of TDRs should be considered in some fashion. Regarding Stahl, the applicant in that case owned the large site directly across the side street and therefore could have transferred TDRs there. Stahl argued the presence of rent-regulated tenants made the site unviable. The commission noted in its decision that the applicant had not submitted any expert testimony on the TDR viability issue. And more importantly, the landmark site for which Stahl was seeking a hardship also had rent and did have rent-regulated tenants. But Stahl had implemented a long-term strategy of not re-renting apartments as they became vacant. This was a many, many years long strategy. The commission noted that Stahl could have done that with the non-landmark site and then transferred TDRs. It also noted that the university across the avenue had announced expansion plans, and therefore it was a possible receiving site. In the end, the commission denied the hardship because it found the property was capable of yielding a reasonable return, but never had to figure out how potential TDR sales could be factored into the analysis because it wasn't necessary. Finally, with the St. Bart's decision, the commission mentioned the failure to try and sell TDRs as part of its broader analysis of potential resources that could be tapped if the city engaged in prudent financial management. It also noted that there apparently had been one inquiry into purchasing them. The decision doesn't explain how one would or could substantively consider the TDRs in the analysis. It is noteworthy, however, that St. Bart's had substantial financial assets, including a large investment portfolio and an endowment that it could use, thus it was not under the financial stress like the applicant in this case and could theoretically take time to try to find a potential buyer. In summary, the potential for selling TDRs is considered by the commission in analyzing a hardship application. That is not the same as saying an applicant must have tried to sell TDRs prior to filing an application, and that the failure to do so means the hardship is denied. I note that in this case, unlike in either Stahl or St. Bart's, there has been extensive expert testimony about the viability of the TDRs, and you can choose to rely on that testimony. That's the end of my presentation, Commissioners. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, do we have questions for Mark? Okay,
Let me turn it back to Lisa then.
we do have Commissioner Jefferson?
In the report, it says that,
Can you speak up, Commissioner? I can't hear you.
in the report, it says that the center relocated to another nearby landmark church, St. Peter's and St. Andrew's, where it has operated since vacating the West Park premises. Have they kept up their payments? Are they viable? Have they been viable over this time?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear it. I couldn't hear you, Commissioner. Can someone just,
Since the center moved
Yeah.
to St. Paul's and to St. Andrews, have they kept up their payments? Have they been viable tenants?
I can't.
Mark, the
I
question,
can't speak to what this, I mean, the center has moved to, and is now occupying, as far as what I understand, another landmark property, St. Paul and St. Andrews. And I can't speak to whether they have, their relationship with that. All I know is they're operating and they send out lots of information about their programming.
Thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions? No?
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so then, as I mentioned before Mark's presentation, I think it is time for us to close the record on the application to move towards our deliberations. I would like to give the applicant and the public one last opportunity to submit any new materials or final summary of their positions. And please, there's no need to resubmit materials that are already in the record. And I do want to note that we have received some more materials since May 5th. Those have all been in the, provided to all of you. So I propose an additional 2 weeks before the record is closed. And so if you are all amenable, I need a motion to close the record at 5 p.m. on July 10th. Commissioner Goldblum, can I have a motion?
So moved.
Commissioner Jefferson, can you second?
No second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion is closed. Okay, so we are going to move on to our next item. Corey? And, oh, I'm sorry, we're now moving to our public hearing agenda.
Yes, and we'll start with public hearing item number 1, LPC 26-08387, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 233, Lot 14, 145 Grand Street in the Soho Cast Iron Historic District. This is a federal-style residential structure with Italianate-style alterations built circa 1821 to 22, and the application is to remove a fire escape.
Good morning, Commissioners. Emma Mooney, Preservation Staff. The item before you is an application to remove a fire escape at 145 Grand Street, located at the south side of Grand Street between Cosby Streets and Lafayette Street in the Soho Cast Iron Historic District Extension. The fire escape is not original to the building and does not exhibit any ornamental details. However, the item is before you because fire escapes are a character-defining feature of this district. This is the site plan and the location within the district, and tax photos from 2 different angles. Here are existing condition photographs of the building and the row seen from various locations. Note that there is a park directly across the street. And the existing condition on the left and proposed on the right with the fire escape removed. And existing and proposed rendered. And the architect is here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Do we have any questions, commissioners? I'm sorry, Commissioner Jefferson?
Yeah, is this becoming a single-family house?
No, it is a interim multiple dwelling with the
Please.
jurisdiction of the loft law.
And just
and
state your
under
name
law
for the
court.
record.
Oh, I'm so sorry. My name's Robert Tan. I'm a partner at Gerard and Tan Architects.
Commissioner Goldblum?
On this block, on this side of the street, how many of the buildings have fire escapes?
If we go back, as you could see, there's 1, 2, 3, pretty much all of them.
Thank you.
The reason for the removal is that the building is being converted from manufacturing commercial use to residential under the loft law. And because of the size of the building, we are fully sprinkling the building so that it's a completely automatic sprinkler building. And that the code and the MDL 277.7 allows for one means of egress, and that would be the central stair. It has a lot to do with maintenance and, having the fire escape being a problem with the facade.
Commissioners, any other questions? Okay, not seeing any. Let's move to public testimony. I will ask Stephen Thompson, Director of Intergovernmental Community Affairs, to lead that. Oh, is there anybody in the room that would like to testify? No, let's see if there's anybody on Zoom.
Those joining via Zoom who wish to speak, please raise your hand. The first speaker will be Christina Conroy. I'll be promoting you to panelist. We ask you to accept that invitation and unmute yourself, state your name for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Christina Conroy for the Victorian Society, New York. Now, there are two legitimate points of view on the appropriateness of removing the fire escape, and we present them both as we are of mixed opinion. Now, first, the argument for removing the fire escape is that it's a later addition to a much earlier building. It obscures the design and details of the facade. It doesn't incorporate decorative ironwork. It may over time stress the masonry facade, though no indication of that is provided in the presentation. Removing the fire escape would allow the building to read as the single-family row house it was originally. Now, on the other side, the fire escape represents a historic change in the neighborhood from residential to commercial. It reflects the city's efforts to improve safety following tragic fires like that of the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory. As a result, fire escapes are characteristic features of the Soho Historic District. Now, in this case, the building is part of a row of 4-story houses and tenements, all of which have added fire escapes, and all of which are visible straight on as a group from the park across the street. So while these aren't iconic Soho factory and loft buildings with fire escapes, they make an important statement about the history of the district as seen as a group from the point of view non-typically available. Now, this argues against removal of this and the adjacent fire escapes. So thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. Do we have any other attendees on Zoom wishing to speak? Please raise your hand. All right, seeing none, I'll note for the record that Manhattan Community Board 2 recommends approval.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to respond to any of the testimony?
Not necessary. I mean, basically, I don't want to say thank you.
That's fine. And Commissioners, any final questions? Commissioner Chu.
Would there ever be a consideration for converting the fire escapes, removing the ladders and retaining the baskets or the balconies?
I don't believe there is. I mean, the owner has not expressed any interest to that, nor the tenants.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, let's close the hearing. Commissioner Ginsburg, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Commissioner Kwame, could you second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes. The hearing is closed. And let's see, Vice Chair Master, would you start the discussion?
Sure. I thought it was very interesting that the Victorian Society had a mixed opinion. I've never seen that. So my thoughts are that the fire escapes are not original to the building. They are not excessively decorative. And even though we do have fire escapes in the adjacent buildings, I think that the removal of the fire escape will really more highlight the existing facade. And so I am okay with the removal of the fire escapes.
Commissioner Ginsburg?
I agree with Commissioner Masters. I can find this appropriate.
Commissioner Kwame? Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Chen.
It's okay. And also, I'm in agreement with the comments. Also, in the context that historically, as you know, I'm an advocate for preserving the fire escapes, but as a rule, in general, that correct me if I'm wrong, that normally these are removed if the applicant comes along, and so I find that it's okay.
Commissioner Kwame?
I also find what's being proposed to be appropriate.
Commissioner Chu?
Appropriate.
Commissioner Jefferson?
The function is no longer required, so therefore it's appropriate.
Commissioner Goldblum?
I do struggle with this one. Texture of the fire escapes is very important to the district. I think because these were originally not.
Commissioner Goldblum, could you speak up a little?
Sorry. I think that because the fire escapes, because these were not tenements, I think that they could be removed. I think in the case of tenements, though, they should be retained even decorative.
Thank you. And Commissioner Mahan.
Given that these are non-original, and the change of use in the building, I can find this appropriate.
Okay, Vice Chair Master, could you please read the motion?
Sure. In the matter of LPC 08387, 145 Grand Street in the Soho Cast Iron Historic District. A federal style residential structure with Italianate style alterations built in 1821-22. Application is to remove a fire escape. I note that the building style, scale, materials are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Soho Cast Iron Historic District extension. I recommend approval, finding that the fire escape is not original to the building and does not possess any unique or decorative design features, that the removal of the fire escape will restore full visibility to the cornice, a significant architectural feature of the facade, and will facilitate masonry repairs, that within the context of a small group of altered row houses, including others featuring fire escapes with more decorative designs, the removal of the simple fire escape at this row house will not diminish the character or unity of the row, and that the work will not detract from the special architectural and historic character of the building or historic district.
Commissioner Mahan, can you second?
Second.
Okay, and John Weiss, could you please read the call? The vote.
Chair Kersavage,
Aye.
Vice Chair Master,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Chu,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum, Commissioner Quimby,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Mahan.
Aye.
None in favor, none opposed, the motion passes.
Okay, thank you. That's been approved. And we're going to move to our next item. Corey.
Next item is public hearing item number 2, LPC 26-10218. An application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 233, Lot 17, 151 Grand Street, aka 158 to 164 Lafayette Street in the Soho Cast Iron Historic District Extension. This is a Queen Anne style store and loft building with commercial storefronts designed by F&W.E. Bloodgood and John B. Snook and Sons and built in 1889 to 1890. The application is to reauthorize work to construct rooftop and rear yard additions and install storefront infill and a barrier-free access ramp, approved pursuant to Certificate of Appropriateness 19-7619.
Okay, Commissioners, the applicants have entered the hearing via Zoom. Julie, you now have control of the presentation. If you can click on your screen, advance the slides using your arrow keys or your mouse, please state your name for the record. You may begin.
Thanks, Abby. Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Julie Rosen from Higgins, Quaisbarth and Partners. We're the preservation consultants on this project. I'm joined by my colleagues Cass Stackelberg, who should be there in person momentarily, as well as Sarah Ripple via Zoom. James Bush from ASK Consulting Services is also with you in person, and Dane Barnes from BHK Engineering is with us via Zoom. So this is 151 Grand Street, located at the southwest corner of Grand and Lafayette Streets in the Soho Cast Iron Historic District Extension. It's a 5-story L-shaped store and loft building constructed in 1889. And in 2016, LPC approved a full building rehabilitation project, which included the construction of an L-shaped rooftop addition set back from the primary facades, as well as a rear yard extension. And rendered views from that approval are shown here. LPC found this project appropriate and issued a certificate of appropriateness permit, which has since expired, and we are now seeking the reinstatement of that permit. Just to take you through the project timeline, between 2015 and 2016, the design went through a number of iterations before it was formally approved in August of 2016 at a public meeting. In January 2017, the Certificate of Appropriateness permit was issued. This formalized the approval of a comprehensive scope of work on the building, including the 1-story setback rooftop and rear yard extensions, which I already mentioned, new wood windows on 2 primary facades matching the historic configurations and material, new window openings on secondary elevations, as well as a comprehensive facade restoration scope, which included masonry repairs, cast iron storefront and cornice restoration, and facade cleaning. Storefront restoration and new wood infill were also part of the project, as well as the installation of a barrier-free access ramp and sidewalk repairs. In the spring of 2019, construction began on the project, and within the first year, the full building had been scaffolded, steel framing for the rooftop addition was constructed, the roof deck concrete was poured, interior steel framing and carpentry was installed, and plumbing work had started. But by 2020, when non-essential construction work was suspended during COVID, this project was shut down. The shutdown ultimately put financial strain on the project, and the building subsequently went into foreclosure, and it was during this period that the certificate of appropriateness permit expired. The good news is that in February of this year, the property was purchased by a new ownership entity with the goal of completing construction per the original LPC approval. We have a few historic photos from the 1940s here. These provided reference for the original project's storefront and window restoration scopes, which are still going to be carried out as part of the current project. And this is the current condition of the building. On the left is the Lafayette Street elevation looking west, and then on the right is our view looking north up Lafayette Street. As I noted, the rooftop framing's already constructed. We can see this above the cornice line here. There's also a sidewalk shed around the perimeter of the site, and the facade is in a state of disrepair with visible graffiti. In this aerial view, we see the framing for that rooftop addition, and steel framing has also been constructed in the rear where the new stair core will be constructed. The next several sheets have drone photos of the as-built conditions. I'm going to move through these quickly. I'm happy to come back if anyone has questions, but as you'll see, all of the steel framing, studs for the new walls, and roof structures have been installed. And here we're inside the framing, a couple of views on the left and right. The project engineer has confirmed via an on-site survey and measurements that the constructed framing matches the LPC approval. And then at the rear of the building, this is where the new stair extension will be located. We also have the existing and approved drawings from the Certificate of Appropriateness permit set showing the full scope of work. So these are the existing elevations, the east and north facades, which show the removal of non-historic infill and the removal of bulkheads at the roof. And in the approved elevations, we now see the new storefront infill, new wood windows at the primary elevations, new window openings added to the secondary north elevation, and then at the roof is the one-story rooftop addition with the new stair enclosure at the rear. Here are existing views of the secondary south and west facades and the approved drawings. This elevation on the right shows the new brick stair enclosure at the west elevation. And then at the south elevation, we are proposing the installation of 6 new window openings. The approved storefront scope includes new wood display windows and doors with bulkheads and transom windows reflecting the historic condition at the building. The historic cast iron columns and cornice will be retained and restored. A new ramp will be installed to provide barrier-free access at the office entrance off of Lafayette. The other entrance here on Grand Street is at grade. This will be the retail entrance. These other entrances are egress doors that are already at grade as well. So we are proposing the installation of 1 ramp. Moving to the roof, there's an existing roof plan on the left, the proposed here on the right. The addition, as I mentioned, is 1 story. It's L-shaped. There are setbacks off of both the Lafayette Street and the Grand Street frontages. And then at the north and south elevations, those walls actually align with the historic brick walls below. And to the west is the new stair enclosure. Here's the roof of the addition. There will be 1 elevator bulkhead at the north end of the roof, a clear story window installed at this chamfered corner, and then on the west end of the roof are mechanicals on that west leg. Here we see the rooftop addition in elevation. The east elevation on the bottom here, this faces Lafayette. It will be clad with gray brick with metal and glass infill. On the roof of the addition, as I mentioned, is a brick-clad elevator bulkhead and a clear story window. And then at the west elevation, the addition is designed as a vertical extension of the historic brick wall below. So here it's clad with whitewashed red brick to match the existing brick with punched window openings to reflect the secondary facade character. And our materials board showing the proposed paint and brick swatches, as well as an enlarged view of the rooftop addition. We do have a visibility study, which takes off of the 2016 public meeting deck. So this was the view corridor established in 2016. We have taken new photographs that match the views that were documented in 2016. Everything is consistent with what was previously documented. So I'll click through these quickly here, but happy to come back if anyone has any questions. There is minimal visibility of the rooftop addition over the primary and secondary elevations. The rehabilitation project at 151 Grand Street was previously found appropriate by LPC, and the modifications remain appropriate to the building and the historic district. In addition to restoring historic features throughout the building, the rooftop addition has a minimal profile, is clad in brick, and it's set back from the primary design facades, and it will mostly be seen in conjunction with the secondary elevations. The team looks forward to restarting work on this building, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Commissioners, do you have any questions? Commissioner Mahan?
Are there any changes to the proposal from the 2016 approval?
We are not proposing any changes.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Master? Oh, okay. Any other questions? Not seeing any. Let's move to public testimony. Is there anybody in the room that would like to testify? Okay, not seeing that. Let's move to Stephen Thompson to see if we have people on Zoom.
Those joining via Zoom who wish to offer testimony, please raise your hand. Great. Seeing no hands, I'll note for the record that Manhattan Community Board 2 recommends approval.
Okay. Would you like to respond to that testimony? No.
No, thank you. We're
Okay.
happy the community board's in support.
Great. Commissioners, any final questions? Okay, let's move to close the hearing. Commissioner Ginsburg, would you make a motion?
So moved.
Vice Chair Master, will you second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed. Commissioner Mahan, would you like to start the discussion?
Sure, this looks great and was previously approved by the commission, and I'm very glad to see the project restarting. It looks largely restorative in nature. There's minimal visibility of the rooftop addition, and great to see this going again.
Great. Commissioner Goldblum? Commissioner Jefferson?
Appropriate.
Commissioner Chu?
Agreed, appropriate.
Commissioner Quimby?
Appropriate.
Okay, great. And I should have noted earlier that Commissioner Chen is recused from this item. Commissioner Ginsburg
Appropriate.
and Vice Chair Master.
Appropriate.
Okay. Commissioner Mahan, could you please read the motion?
I will. In the matter of LPC 26-10218, 151 Grand Street, AK 158 to 164 Lafayette Street, Soho Cast Iron Historic District Extension, a Queen Anne style store and lofts building with commercial storefronts designed by F and W.E. Bloodgood and John B. Snook and Sons, and built in 1889 to 1890. Application is to reauthorize work to construct rooftop and rear yard additions and install storefront infill and a barrier-free access ramp, approved pursuant to Certificate of Appropriateness 19-7619. I recommend approval, finding that the work will not damage or eliminate any significant architectural features, that non-historic infill will be removed and historic openings restored, and the proposed storefront infill featuring large display windows, wood-paneled bulkheads, and transom windows will recall the configuration, details, materials, and finish of historic storefronts found on this building and throughout the historic district. That the historic cast iron columns will be restored and incorporated into the proposed design, that the ramp will provide barrier-free access in the least obtrusive manner possible, and will feature diamond plate cladding in keeping with sidewalk materials historically found in the district. That the majority of the bulk and additions is visible in conjunction with secondary elevations and over the interior L-shaped portion of the building, and will not detract from the primary designed elevations. That the proposed rooftop addition will be set back from the Grand Street primary facade and will not be visible over the designed portion of the facade from directly across the street. That the portion of the rooftop addition seen over the Lafayette Street facade will have a low profile and will not overwhelm or compete with the building's prominent historic cornice, or detract from the building's massing, and the dark gray cladding will help it recede from view. That the rooftop and rear additions will be entirely visible from Grand Street over lower scale buildings, but their simple design, featuring simple brick detailing and punched window openings constructed flush with the existing secondary facades, will result in a seamless addition of mass that will not call undue attention to itself. That the visible brick-clad mechanical enclosure and elevator bulkhead is in keeping with similar visible utilitarian rooftop additions found in the district, and that the work will not detract from the special architectural and historic character of the Soho Cast Iron Historic District extension.
Second.
Chair Savage,
Aye.
Vice Chair Master,
Aye.
Commissioner Chu,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum,
Aye.
Commissioner Quimby,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Mahan.
Aye.
8 in favor, none opposed. The motion passes.
Okay, thank you. That's approved.
Thank you.
And let's move to the next item.
Right, the next item is public hearing item number 3, LPC 26-01951, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 209, Lot 1, 277 Canal Street, aka 277 to 289 Canal Street, and 418 to 422 Broadway in the Soho Cast Iron Historic District Extension. This is a Renaissance Revival style theater, store, and loft building designed by David M. Oltarsh and built 1927 to 2028. The application is to construct a vertical enlargement and establish a master plan governing the installation of storefront infill and signage.
Good morning. Oh, what a beautiful venue, right? Central air and everything. So nice. Hi, Albert LeBose from United American Land, the developer here. Just want to give you a little background on us. Let's see how they did. Okay. A little background. We've been in business we're a family business. We've been in business for over 40 years. And most of our projects are preservation work. We're here before the commission. And we're a big part of the community in Soho. Our office has been there for over 35 years. Some of the works we've done is 287 Broadway, on the corner of Reed Street, cast iron building. We won the Lucy Moses Award. Incidentally, that particular building, during the parade, all the parade goers have been climbing up the side of the fire escape, going all the way up to the roof. A little fun fact. Another building we have is 321, 323 Canal Street, a restoration. We also won a Lucy Moses Award. Also, as well as 53 Howard, corner of 309 Canal Street, where the Mercery is. Just some of our work that we've done before the commission. So this is the corner, as we all know, on the Canal of Broadway and Canal, 277 Canal. And when we're doing this project originally, we were considering making the case that this building doesn't belong in the district, because really, frankly, if you look at it, it doesn't look like a Soho cast iron building. But we thought it'll be more interesting and we like doing things the hard way, right? Trying to keep this building the way it is and just building on top of it. So this is what we had approved a couple of years ago. And we were very excited to be the first one out of the Soho rezoning to bring this building. We got this approved and we're very, very excited, bringing 25%, 25 units of affordable housing. So why are we here? We had this thing approved. We're all happy, very excited. Then the community board came to us and said, you know something? This building this particular station needs accessibility. Hasn't been accessible, and we know stories of people, we own 3 buildings on this corner of Canal and Broadway, and every time we go to the community board has come to us and say, hey, we need to have accessibility to the station. So after we got this approved, the MTA came to us and said, this community really needs accessibility. So we said, okay, let's go back to the drawing board. We asked Morris to come back and see what we can do to make this building accessible. And I think we had a great building with an accessibility bonus that we came back with. And I think it's a win-win for the community. And in addition to that, we're going to have 31 units that's going to be affordable. So I think I'm going to turn this over to Morris or to Erin. Oh, okay, to Erin.
Good morning, Commissioners. Erin Ruley, Higgins Quays Barth and Partners. So what we're going to do is start a little bit with a general introduction to the site and the project and the 2023 approval. Then we'll sort of go through the zoning and massing for the proposal, and then come back and talk about the history, context, and proposed design. So as Albert said, this is 277 Canal Street. It's the northeast corner of Canal and Broadway. It's located within the Soho Historic District Extension, which you can see outlined in the map on the left, which picked up the sort of peripheral areas that were left out of the original designation of Soho in 1973. So this is a 2010 designation, and our site is here at the south boundary at the corner of Broadway and Canal. It's a 3-story mixed-use commercial building, restrained in style, given the Renaissance Revival style in the designation report. And it was mixed use from the outset. So it had commercial on the upper floors, retail at the ground floor, and it housed a very large theater known as the Major. The original architect and developer was Major David Oltarsh, and it was named for him. And it was constructed in 1927. And so in terms of the 2023 approval, we had come forward and proposed a 9-story plus penthouse addition. And the approach was very straightforward, to expand the historic building through a shared DNA. So the historic building became the base of the composition, and was fully restored and reestablished all of the pedestrian experience at the ground floor, new storefronts, very active, vital retail corner. And then extend that vocabulary up of the brick and terracotta up into the building, and use that this sort of essential DNA to establish the materiality and rhythm and design for the building above. And in approving that project, there were 4 key findings by the commission, and each of these applies as we go forward into the new project. That the existing building at 277 does not represent the primary period of significance of the district, so the sort of primary phases of development of the historic district, that the building is simply designed mixed use and does not relate to those commercial and manufacturing periods of significance, and that the specific building type does not have a specific height that is required for the building to convey its significance. That there is a historic precedent for vertical extensions within the historic district at the street wall, and that it is located at the intersection of Broadway and Canal, 2 wide streets at the boundary of the district, and that tall buildings were historically located on the Broadway corners with smaller buildings on the side streets. So all of these findings remain true for the new project. The expanded project builds on this formula, we believe, in a more meaningful way, and it is one that's going to deliver and meet the needs of all New Yorkers through a combination of transit accessibility and increased housing. And so with that, I'm going to pass the presentation to Christopher Courtney of MA Architects to walk you through the massing and zoning for the site.
Good morning, commissioners. Right, a few slides on zoning and massing. The project delivers on two major city planning initiatives from 2021. The Soho zoning, the Soho and NoHo rezoning plan was developed to create new housing opportunities in Soho and NoHo, a high opportunity and traffic-rich neighborhood that has historically not had a lot of opportunity to generate significant amount of affordable housing or really any housing. On the left side is the rezoning map, and on the right side is the as-of-right massing. In this case, the massing is 145 feet to the street wall, 12 stories, and the max height of the building ability would be 205 feet. The dashed line is indicating the 13-story previously approved massing from 2023. The Zoning for Accessibility Initiative established a floor area bonus via a bulk and height waiver. We're making use of both of those in this project. A floor area increase of 1.94 FAR and a modification of the maximum base height and building height. In this case, on the diagram on the right, the dashed line is showing the as-of-right base height, and the hatch is showing the as-of-right max building height. So the building is extending 3 stories, essentially 3 stories higher with that height bonus. On the left side is the subway map. In this case, you can see below the project site, the N and the Q tunnel actually go below the project site itself. For the proposed design, there'll be approximately 145,000 square feet. It is delivering on the goals of the Soho and NoHo rezoning and the zoning for accessibility. As far as housing, there will be 123 units with approximately 31 affordable units. 36 units are being provided as part of the transit improvement, in addition to the as-of-right. And so for a total of 159 units, again, 31 of which would be affordable. It's worth pointing out a couple of challenges and logistics to the site in general. The excavation is generally adjacent to, but also directly above a subway tunnel. There's also, given its namesake of Canal Street, there's a high water table. And in general, just protecting and restoring the existing building, several challenges for the site. So here we have the existing condition. There's an existing subway entrance through an easement with the MTA and the building itself. The entrance does lead directly to the northern RW platform and connects through a mezzanine area to the platform of the N, Q, and 6 lines. The proposed MTA improvement takes the center bay entrance and moves it to the northern bay. This is so that we can still maintain a set of stairs, but we can also make space for an elevator shaft, which the MTA will then build and introduce an elevator. Also, as part of that will be a new fare platform and mezzanine that will connect directly to the subway line below. This generally doubles the size of the easement area of the MTA. And in general, we wanted to architecturally preserve as much of the storefronts as possible. So we were able to go from 2 storefronts and 1 subway entrance and maintain that architecturally as far as the streetscape.
Great. So in terms of the context and appropriateness, the proposal, of course, builds on the foundation of the previous approval. So we'll reestablish the basis for those findings through the presentation, but with specific focus on the character for the new design and, of course, the additional height for the new project. So here we see the site over time, and there has been a significant history of change throughout the site's long history. the first sort of documented condition, early 19th century commercial corner here, along with the very busy intersection of Canal and Broadway. These buildings give way in the 1860s to a store and loft building, Italianate store and loft building that was constructed. And then in 1913, with the construction of the subway, the building was demolished. So the previously existing building was demolished to make way for the subway. A subway entry was integrated into into our existing building, but at the time, it was a series of taxpayers and small kiosks that were developed on the vacant lot in this 1920s photo. And then finally in 1927, the mixed-use building is constructed. You can see it here. The subway entry is at the existing location in that center bay on Broadway. So we have this long history and a very early origin to the connection between the site and the construction of the subway. The existing building is in need of restoration. Here we have a couple of existing conditions photographs that give us a sense of the prevailing conditions on the building, but also establish our palette for the key elements that are going to inform our design. And so just overall, the building is a variegated red brick with terracotta. The terracotta's all been coated. You can see lots of open joints and brick conditions in need of repair along the building. But primarily the elements of the existing building design, this flanked corner where you have a recessed pier flanked by the pilasters that are framing it, becomes a key element in the new design. That projecting pier for the pilasters that mark each of the piers along the building. And then the easternmost bay of the building has a sort of pavilion structure. This was the theater entry. It had the historic marquee, and it's marked by this pitched roof parapet with a tympanum that has a lattice work decoration. And all of this, even though it's all very kind of simple and restrained, becomes the sort of palette or kit for the interpretation of the new building above. And so the proposal for the base building remains exactly the same as it was in 2023, with the intent to reestablish the pedestrian experience, the rhythm of the bays along Broadway and Canal Street. Much of that has been diminished over time due to material loss. Many of the columns have been clad over. And the storefronts are varied in their conditions. So the proposal is a full restoration of the primary facades of the building, terracotta and brick restoration and repair, reestablishing the terracotta piers, so recladding those in terracotta as needed, and then recladding the historic structure of the marquee remains, and so that would be reclad for the new residential entry. The storefront and window configuration above is based on the historic tripartite configuration of the bays, and so that will be replicated in new aluminum windows with the reflecting the historic transom and that tripartite divide. And at the storefronts, similarly, the tripartite configuration. The storefronts and signage were separately considered under a master plan as part of this overall approval. And so that would be consistent going forward as well. And to look at the details of that a bit, the storefront master plan allowed for flexibility between the entry bays and display windows. Again, that tripartite configuration, contemporary aluminum infill. They have 18-inch bulkheads, so consistent with historic storefront dimensions. At the transoms, they require louver system, so there's a ornamental screen that is added in front of the louver system, and this picks up on the lattice of the tympanum in the historic building. And then in the section here, you can see the signage, the way ultimately the signage was approved was for 3 types of signage: bracket, sign band and decal signage. And the sign band signage was established in a 4-foot zone. There's a maximum height of 3 feet of signage, but it has a sort of floating zone. And this was in a way of capturing the sort of energy and diversity of signage that we see along Canal Street, so that it wasn't sort of a static installation that was in contrast to the very energetic environment along Canal. And so this is really how that all comes together. It allows for various types of signage. The sign band signage that can float up and below, the bracket signs, which were available in each of the bays, and then decal signage on the glazing. And of course, the storefronts were organized, and the master plan allows for flexibility, whether it's one large retail space or multiple commercial establishments. These were the guidelines for that master plan, again, establishing the provisions for the dimensional signage at the sign band, again, maximum of 36 inches tall. It could be internally illuminated, non-illuminated, or externally illuminated, and there were ground floor bracket signs allowable at each of the bays, and then window decals that would meet the staff rules for occupying 20% of the glazing area. And then also provisions for interior signage that largely meet the staff rules. And all of that, it was found appropriate because of the very rich context of Canal Street. So here we see the historic conditions, signage on every level of the buildings, projecting signs at the second floor, at the ground floors, and a real sort of presence and identity for this very commercial thoroughfare. That continues into, this is a early 2000s photo. I think many of you will remember Pearl River Mart being located in the building, but this is just an example. The illuminated signage at every floor, 2-story banners on the building. And so this is in an unregulated context, of course, but this is the very nature of Canal Street. So it was a bit of a challenge to try to establish a master plan that codifies irregularity, something that gives character and allows for the storefronts to maintain their presence and compete against everything else that's happening in the immediate context. So in terms of the overall evolution of the district and the height of the buildings, the district evolved as 3 specific periods of development. The earliest phase of development was residential buildings that were then later converted for commercial use. So this is Federal period, Greek Revival, Italianate row houses, and brick and largely brick buildings, 2, 3, and modified 4 stories. And this gives way to the 5- and 6-story cast iron buildings as the commercial district starts to develop around the residential district. And then finally, in the late 19th and early 20th century, the construction of the tall masonry buildings along Broadway, which are primarily 9 to 12 stories in height. So following that period, that sort of final period of development, the district goes through a period of decline. Not much is being built at that time, but what is happening are major infrastructure and transportation improvements in the area. So this is when the site of 277 Canal is cleared, and when the district was extended in 2010, 277 was called out as being a building that is evocative of the changes that were taking place in Soho as a result of transportation improvements and new forms of mass entertainment in the early decades of the early 20th century. So the
only other building in the district that has a comparable description is 270 Lafayette Street, which we see on the right. So this is showing you the variety of what starts to happen after those 3 phases of development. In those 3 early phases of development, there's an internal consistency, a prescribed height, materiality, and distinct characteristics that you can identify with each of those periods of development. Once we pass those periods, we get into this great range of variety, stylistic, materiality, and also in terms of scale. 270 Lafayette Street happens to be the largest building in the historic district. It is also the only building that's reflective of the 1916 zoning. And so you can see that as it starts to set back, it has different varying setbacks along the side street and Lafayette Street. And so during this period, we see that the range that starts to evolve in the district. As part of the original approval, the part of the case was the history of vertical extensions at the street wall. We, of course, see this all over the city. And an example of that is the GM building, which was originally constructed as this 3-story base and then subsequently received a tower, separate architects, separate owner at the time. Interestingly, this building, when it was expanded, incorporated a new entry to the newly constructed 8th Avenue line for the subway. And then more locally in Soho, we have 2 specific precedents where buildings were expanded vertically at the street wall. 525 Broadway, which was a 1-story bank building and then received a 7-story addition subsequent to that, continuing the vocabulary. And then 565 Broadway, similarly, a mid-19th century building that was expanded in the late 19th century. And here there's subtle shifts in materiality. The base building is Tuckahoe marble, and the upper portion of the building is a buff brick, but picking up on similar stylistic elements, the cornices and lintels of the window openings, to really extend the vocabulary of the building. So very direct precedents for vertical extensions in the historic district. The building or the site has always been shaped by infrastructure, addressing civic needs and improving city life. Starting here, this is the site on the northeast corner. Overlooking the canal, which is the defining element of this entire area. And subsequently continues through the construction of the subway and other transportation improvements. So Canal Street is 100 feet wide. It becomes this broad thoroughfare, interstate, interborough, connects the Holland Tunnel to the east, and the Manhattan Bridge is completed and connects all of Brooklyn to the west. The BRT comes over the Manhattan Bridge as part of that and goes directly under the site. So all of this connection is happening right under our site, which makes for a very interesting history, but also a very, very complex series of platforming conditions, which we can talk about if that is of interest to you, but it is a very complicated subway station and presents a lot of challenges for the project in general. But again, infrastructure and delivering for civic needs has always been a part of the history of this site. David Oldharsh was an engineer. He was the original architect and developer for the building, worked primarily in collaboration with other architects. He was a consulting engineer for 40 Wall Street with H. Craig Severance, and then designed primarily small theater buildings and market buildings. During the Depression, he was a bit of a visionary and proposed to convert Times Square theaters into swimming pools. So a very early adaptive reuse of buildings for a public good. And then most interestingly, which a building you'll all be familiar with, 837 Washington on the lower left. Oldharsh was the architect architect for the Market Building. Morris Ajmi was the architect for the addition. So we've seen this collaboration between Old Harsh and Ajmi over time. And so then finally, in just thinking about the height, because we recognize that this is a significant increase in the height on the site, here are just a few examples of iconic New York City buildings that incorporate subway entries into them. And I think this speaks to not just the identity of placemaking, like the concept of marking the subway or having an icon to walk toward within a low scale environment, but also speaks to what's required in order to accommodate a subway entry and the improvements that are adjacent to it. It is, they are most typically in large-scale developments, not on smaller sites with limited footprints. And there's a reason for that. It's because it is so thorny. But again, these sort of prominent, iconic buildings that mark the entry point for the transit system. And then in terms of the streetscape. So here we have our proposal set within the context of Canal Street. So this is the north side of Canal. This is reflecting the south side of Canal. And then below that, Broadway, we're here. This is Canal. And then the west side of Broadway, sorry. And you can see that the height of the proposal exceeds what we see within the district. But we believe this is a location that can tolerate the additional height and bulk. It is located on the district boundary that was originally excluded from the Soho district. It's on a Broadway corner where tall buildings exist. It's at the intersection of two wide streets and maintains the characteristic juxtaposition of scale that we see along Broadway, where districts' various phases of development abut. Immediately to the south, which we see here, is 401 Broadway. This is one block, half a block to the south across the street. It is within the Tribeca East Historic District, which of course is a different district, but the boundary for the districts abut. So you are looking at it right here, and then the 277 is located here. So we think it's fair to include this as part of the context for tall buildings, since it's the proximity, the location of the boundaries, and it's consistent with how the commission has looked at other approvals, looking at buildings outside of the district nearby that could provide a basis for height and scale for proposed new construction. And with that, the proposed design, and Morris is going to take you through this. And I think just in terms of how we were thinking about this, how the site might absorb a taller intervention, it is of course about height, scale, and materiality, but it's also about the broader historic context. The site has a distinct history at the intersection of infrastructure, transportation, and development. And this is a unique opportunity for that next phase of history. And I think Morris will take you through the design.
Well, Christopher's going to help. Good morning, Chair Kursavich, commissioners and staff. I'm Morris Ajmi from MA. We were pretty excited in 2023 when we had the original proposal approved. And then when Albert called back and said, we want to expand the building because we have this additional MTA bonus, I had mixed feelings because I didn't think we could just add more on top. The original premise of using the historic structure as part of a composition for base, middle, and top, I thought was solid and appropriate. Maintaining the street wall seemed to be the right approach. And pulling from the DNA of the building also seemed to make sense. But we really, I think, took another look at the building, and we unlocked, I think, this design by looking at the gradient and how that original structure could then really flow up into the building, as well as some of the reworking and articulation of the facade. So Christopher will take us through.
All right, so so the design strategy in general for the building is to create a dialogue with the base of the building, right? Is to use the DNA, weave historic and modern together, but also respect the base and the proportions of the material and integrate those into the addition of the building. As far as the organization of the building, it is, as mentioned previously, it's designed to reference the Broadway context of the Soho Cast Iron Historic District. This features late 19th and early 20th century taller masonry buildings. These buildings are street wall in their massing. They have robust bases and crowns and are constructed of stone, brick, and terracotta. In this case, we have a 3-story base, an 18-story addition, and it's topped by a 3-story crown. The piers extend up from the base of the building directly up to extend the rhythm of the building up through the addition. Here we have a view of Canal Street looking east along Canal Street. As far as details and in the design and integrating with the base of the building, the tripart windows and storefront start at the base of the building, extending all the way up, extending the rhythm up. The materials of terracotta and brick are repeated and reused. And in this case, a bronze finish is imbued for all of this infills and storefront. The windows, the slab covers, and this ties the whole building together from base and addition of the building. As far as the material palette, we do have a couple materials that we can pass around here. All right, so for for materiality, on the left side of watch your electronics. For the left side of the image, we're showing the largely two-tone building of the restored base as it's labeled. There's existing bricks and terracotta. There is some granite at the base of the terracotta, the water table, essentially at the sidewalk. For the addition, we're largely following that. We're repeating the terracotta and the brick. For the terracotta, we're proposing a low sheen terracotta. Any sealant joints would be colored to match the same terracotta joint. The mortar would be all repointed, as Aaron mentioned, in this case, the sand-colored mortar color. And then all fenestration would be the bronze-toned aluminum on the right side. That's all fenestration for the base and the middle and the crown as well. So we largely have a two-toned with bronze-toned infill building. There's a standing seam aluminum material that will be used at the penthouse bulkheads and mechanical screen. And then the brick, the bottom right image there is the brick at the lot line in the rear, which is the sort of heavier brick sample that's being passed around, and we'll talk about that in a further slide. So the materials that are being passed around are that brick. They're the two metals on the top right, and then the terracotta, mostly just to understand the sheen and the color of the terracotta. So the building concept. The building concept is a modern interpretation of traditional forms. So starting with the top left image of the tympanum that sits above where the existing theater entrance was. The two strong elements here are the arch and the angle over the pediment. So we've sort of reinterpreted those two forms into this folded arch motif that you see directly below. And then we've sort of brought that up through the height of the building. So we've introduced 2 rows of arches, one below a band course here, and one at the top of the building within the 3-story crown below the cornice. Both levels are slightly distinct from each other in that the fold, this is a little dramatic in its diagrammatic interpretation, but the fold increases a little further as you go up to the height of the building. And so this is done to sort of create a more modern interpretation, but also give some visual complexity certainly a more modern twist. So for the crown view, looking up at the crown of the building, on the left we can see a very strong three-story sort of celebratory, grand in scale crown that tops the building. It is distinguished a little bit from the floors below. You can see on the floors below in the body of the building, there's a brick detail that runs at the center of the piers that transitions and becomes a sort of distinctly, singularly terracotta trim, which is both thinner and deeper at the top of the building. So that creates a fully terracotta crown at the top of the building. The divisions between the windows at the top of the building are more of a T shape, and the center of the building more of a C-shaped sort of channel. And then here on the right side, we can see really quite a dynamic sort of sawtooth depth of shadow and light that's created with that folded arch motif. Here we can also see the band of the slab covers, the spandrel. This is sort of replicating the same sort of size and scale of the spandrel on the brick base of the building between the second and third floors. It's got a sort of wide band with a recess inset. Here we can also just really read the depth of the facade in general, from moving from the piers to the slab cover, to the window divisions, to the windows itself. So the building has quite a bit of depth imbued throughout the full height of it. Here we can also see the depth of the cornice. We've maximized, per current code at least, the maximum 3 foot that can extend past the property line, just to give that cornice as much depth and heft as possible, with certainly a contemporary profile. A couple diagrams on the left. We're looking at essentially the diagram of the masonry examples that we talked about that have a strong base, middle, and crown composition. The diagrams on the right talk about the material transformation specifically. So the existing base of the building has a terracotta first floor, pilasters and courses, and second and third floor largely brick. So we're taking that sort of heavier red brick at the base of the building, and we're transforming it as it moves to the top of the building to something lighter and brighter to sort of help deal with the scale, but still certainly pulling from the base of the building, pulling the DNA and sharing it through up to the top of the building. Here we have a sort of a zoomed in image of that specific material transformation that happens at the center of the building. So at the base of these piers, we have a sort of straight brick condition that's 4 bricks wide. That becomes an angled brick transition through several floors. And then at the top, we return to a straight brick, a singular brick width of condition. These are all running bond bricks. The base of the building is a common bond, but we're proposing a running bond at the top. And then, of course, because these are angled bricks, we're proposing a custom shaped brick that would sort of edge these. So that's what these hatched bricks are showing. I've also brought a sample here. This is a custom brick. This is not the same brick, but this just kind of exemplifies, obviously, an angled brick. In this case, this brick is angled in the Y direction. We'd have that angle in the Z direction for the custom brick for this, but it is possible certainly to get custom bricks to do what we need to do. And then we're also proposing some longer bricks in some of these cases, like a Norman-shaped brick, to resolve and not have slivers of brick that would otherwise happen given the angled condition. Here we're looking at the corner of the building. Specifically, on the left side, we have the existing corner where the 2 pilasters, the 2 piers come together and have that sort of recessed brick condition. So we're recreating that in a slightly different way. As you can see, the pilasters have the brick that's sort of extended a little bit from the recess, but the recess in this case is terracotta. And so the condition at all of the piers is always brick in the middle and terracotta at the edges to frame it, and then that transitions as it moves up to the top of the building. And so sort of we can see that happening through here, just in some blow-ups. And then the details just kind of break this down. So again, that four wide bricks as it's a straight brick. This is the angled condition. And then at the sort of top where it's a straight brick condition of a single brick. And then this just shows the terracotta only that's sort of narrower and deeper at the top of the building versus sort of shallower and wider at the body of the building. So in order to break down for the lot line, in order to break down the scale of the facade here, we've created an arch pattern motif that relates to the main facade. In this case, we've got a two-toned brick condition as well. The brick condition also kind of creates almost a feeling of a pilaster, and the materials are sort of transitioning in a similar way to the front of the building. So there's a lot of relationship to the front of the building. We're pulling the arch motif originally from the tympanum, also from the facade of the building, and then the two-tone brick as well. Here we can see street views. Essentially, these also show that lot line condition. The image on the left in the foreground, we can see, we've got a lot of typical lot line conditions throughout the district that are largely just, common brick. Also here on the left, we can kind of see just an example of some layered arch conditions that happen in some of the existing buildings along Broadway. A few more street views on the left side. Specifically in the background, you can see 401 Broadway, which has a two-tone brick lot line condition as well. That building dealt with the sort of larger lot line condition in a two-toned way. It references openings on the facade of the building. And so we've echoed sort of in two ways, one with the two-tone brick and one with echoing of what's happening on the facade of the building. And the image on the right is another street view looking north along Broadway. Some more street views throughout the district, in this case, both on Crosby Street looking south, just to understand how the building comes up and is adjacent to its direct neighbors. Here again, just looking east on Canal Street. One minor detail to note here, and it's hard to see, but the third window from the left here, this row of windows is a back painted window essentially. This allows for plan accommodation, so there's a few select rows of these throughout the building. And so we'll land here on this image. This image really kind of captures the Y Street condition, the very much pedestrian view of the building on the corner, heavy pedestrian, heavy car, heavy transit, as we know, MTA below. And then as far as the building itself, we think this really reinforces the continuity of the base and the addition, just kind of with this line here, continuing everything from the base, taking that DNA and making a harmonized addition to this building. So yeah, at this time, we're happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioners, do we have any questions? Commissioner Ginsburg.
Something that was said that I just want to clarify. My understanding is if you're doing a building next to, above a transit station, you have to go to the MTA, and if they want space for an elevator or so on, you have to provide it, which wasn't just going to the community and they're saying, wouldn't it be nice? I just want, and then in return, you get a zoning bonus for having to put that in there. Is that understanding correct?
Hi, my name is Ellen Lehman at Fried Frank Land Use Council on the project. That's not correct as applied to this site. There is a zoning requirement for developments or enlargements on the lowest story of a building that you go to MTA and see if they need an easement volume. This is not an enlargement on the lowest story. The lowest story remains intact, and so that requirement doesn't apply. However, there is an existing easement here on the site, and it will be greatly expanded through the improvement.
Thank you.
Commissioners, other questions? Commissioner Jefferson.
I have three questions. One has to do with the elevation. I read somewhere that for 12 floors, the section then changed as it went up from the 12th floor up. But I can't see in your drawings the section, the floor levels. Do you have a drawing that shows the floor levels as they go up in the section of your building?
Yeah, so in the appendix, we have several items. Yeah, so here's the elevation, but you're looking for this section, like the floor-to-floor heights, or you're looking for?
So do they change between the 12th floor and above? Do they get larger, the floor to floor?
Yes, yes, they certainly do. Yes. So the upper portion of the building is a little bit taller floor-to-floor heights.
Why is that?
This gives flexibility to have some just a different condition for tenants at the top of the building than the lower portion of the building.
Okay, I can't, sorry.
Again, yeah, sure. It gives the flexibility for taller floor-to-floor condition as a market condition for the units at the top of the building.
Okay, and second question. You keep mentioning affordability, you mentioned it 4 times. So your original building was how many? In this new building, you have 151 units and 31 affordable, right? Am I correct in that?
That's correct. So there's 25 in the original and there's 31 in the proposed.
In the original, how many affordable units did you have in the original? Did you increase the amount of affordable units in the new one, or they're the same?
Yeah, it's been increased, and it's been increased actually due the transit bonus doesn't require MIH. So so there's 2 increases in area. One is from the transit bonus, and one is from some development area rights that have been negotiated with an adjacent neighbor. And so it's really only that additional approximately 15,000 square feet that's actually providing the additional 6 units.
Is one last question, the second and third floor, are they offices?
No, the second through roof would all be residential, and the ground floor would be retail.
Thank you.
Okay, additional questions? Commissioner Mahan.
Thank you. I have a few questions. As I understand it, part of the appropriateness argument is that this is a corner lot and tall buildings exist on corners, particularly of Broadway. Can you point out in a map where those are?
Okay, there. Sure. So along Broadway, there are a collection of buildings that are late 19th, early 20th century buildings, all sort of maxing out around 175 feet. You see this block. This is up at the north end at Houston Street. There are a couple of slightly smaller buildings within flanking Spring Street, and then on the west side of Broadway, more in that sort of 150-foot range. And then the Broadway Grand, the Jean Nouvel Tower, is at 178 feet. And so that is located here. And then the buildings flanking Broom Street, sorry, are 168 and 166 feet.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Perhaps relatedly, I'm not sure, on slide 26, there's a rendering of a building indicated currently under construction. Where is that located?
That's located right outside of the district. It's on our block. It is this site right here. So it's directly east of us. It's I believe it's 25 stories, designed by Marvel New Housing. under City of Yes.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And then maybe two just follow-up questions to questions that were asked by other commissioners. I'll ask them at the same time. Perhaps in the section, could the applicant please point out where the change in floor-to-floor heights occurred? And then the second question perhaps is for the attorney. I thought I understood the easement till it was explained. And perhaps she could just review that. Yeah, I didn't really understand that. It seems like if they went to the MTA in the first case, why wasn't this need for an elevator brought up, or is it now? I don't know. I didn't follow that at all.
So I can answer the first question about the floors. The change happens at floor 13.
Can you point out on the drawing, please, just with your cursor?
I can zoom in. Yeah, it's clear on this page here. So you've got 10'6" generally, and then it changes to 11'6" from the 13th floor up.
Perfect, thank you.
So there's two provisions in the zoning for accessibility text from 2021 that are relevant. There is a provision that if you're a development or enlargement on the lowest story of a building adjacent to a subway station, you need to ask MTA if it requires an easement volume, just a space carved out in your building for them to come in and do any work. That provision does not apply to this site because it is neither a development nor an enlargement on the lowest story of a building. So there's no requirement to go to the MTA for anything here. However, there is an existing easement on the site. There is this existing subway entrance within the building. There's a second provision in the zoning for accessibility that allows, at a developer's option, to seek a floor area bonus of up to 20%. To provide a major transit improvement. So it's not just a volume of space, it is the developer coming in, paying for it, and doing the work to improve a subway station, and that's what's being proposed here.
Thank you.
I would just add to that from the original project, because we had this conversation, I think Commissioner Ginsburg raised this question during our initial public hearing in 2023, and between our public hearing and our public meeting, we went to MTA and met with them about what was needed here. And at that time, MTA, which I think was developing their capital program, and this station is part of the capital program. At that time, they told us to come back after we had approval. So it's this little bit of a chicken and an egg situation. And so we had the approval, and there's been this conversation ongoing, and the 2 years that we've spent since the 2023 approval have really been focused on the conversations with MTA. It's at a glacial pace. So that's a little bit of the backstory and context for this action today.
Vice Chair Master?
Yeah, I also have a couple of questions. In terms of the floor heights and the enlargement starting from, I guess, floor 14 or 15, if you were to regularize the floor heights, kind of lower them to what the, the lower levels are, how much would that take off the, I guess, 205 feet height approximately? Oh, okay. One floor worth? Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it'd be about 6 feet. It's not quite a floor. Yeah. About
Okay.
6 feet. Yeah.
Thank you.
So there's a couple of floors. One thing to point out is, there's a couple of transitions that are happening that require a little taller floor-to-floor height that doesn't get used, right? It's a transition of pipes and structure, both with the terrace setback as well as infrastructure. So the roof has to be, the top floor has to be a little taller, and then a floor below has to be a little taller. So there's a little bit of a mix in there.
Sounds good. So I did read through some of the testimony, and right now I guess we're about 50 feet higher than any other building in the Soho Historic District. So I know we've kind of touched around this, but can you kind of summarize why, it's okay that we're so much higher than any other building in in the historic district?
Sure. I think the primary points are the site itself, being at the boundary of the district, one that was originally not contemplated as part of the Soho designation. It's on a Broadway corner where tall buildings are located, and Canal Street is extremely wide and busy. I think that just the breadth of it alone can withstand a taller building on the corner. Houston and Houston and Canal Streets are, no, I'm in Houston. I don't know. Houston and Canal are scars of sorts because of all of the transportation, the street widenings, buildings came down. We have a whole layer of new buildings and maybe some leftovers of building fragments that exist on those two streets. And it's, to me, a real opportunity to have something new and important there. And I think that having tall buildings to the south, even though they're outside of the district, that it's a direct visual context within one block. And that is also part of the historic fabric, in that it's hard to cross Canal and not think that you're crossing a boundary of some sort, but it's a bit of an arbitrary boundary between the energy of the north side of Canal and the energy of the south side of Canal. So I think that when you see it in the streetscape, it is very much in context with the tall buildings that we see to the south, without disrupting the reading or impacting how you perceive the tall buildings on Broadway to the north. And I think finally, that broader historical perspective, civic improvements and zoning have shaped the city always. And landmarks doesn't regulate use, of course, but what does use accomplish for the city? And what is the benefit of these improvements for the city for this period in time? Because that's zoning and period-specific improvements all speak to the needs of a community at a specific period in time. Tall building technology boomed. 1916, you had tall buildings on narrow streets. We need light and air. You get setbacks. 1961, you need public spaces. We set back, for better or worse, and push the street wall back. And City of Yes, Soho, NoHo, and zoning for accessibility all address those things. And this site is built for it. It has this long history of being part of the broad historical narrative, and that because of the physical conditions, it can withstand a tall building.
Also, as a follow-up, Erin, can you please tell me what are your, I think you quoted 2 buildings that had height that you said were comparisons. Can you give me the address and the height of those 2 buildings, including the one that hasn't been built yet?
Sure. Let me get to this. Christopher, did we put the height on 130 Lafayette Street is the new building being constructed right outside the district. It's 275 feet. And 401 Broadway is 345 feet. And that is right here. This is a very sort of typical, it's a 1927 skyscraper, but with cascading setbacks on the side street because Walker Street is very narrow. So you get that sort of cascading south end, and the tallest portion is on the north end up toward Canal Street. I would also note that there are 2 vacant lots on the corner of Lafayette and an underdeveloped site on the northwest corner of Lafayette and Canal, all outside the district, that one would anticipate a context of new construction developing. in that area, which is adjacent to that 130 Lafayette Street project under development now, which is also seen here. This is the Marvel building under construction in the context of our building.
Commissioners, other questions? Commissioner Chu.
Yeah, considering the fact that it is the tallest building in the district and around a few, the neighboring blocks, I didn't really see a rendering or an elevation of the north facade, which constitutes a big portion of what you see.
We do have a rendering. Let me get you there.
On.
This is the north facade right here.
But that is only half the building.
We can go to.
It's the
if-
long direction, so it should have more facade.
It
Aren't there-
sets back though, yeah. Go to the.
So it's two parts, right? The lot line itself. Right. The lot line itself is what you saw in the previous rendering, and then that
lot line.
That's correct, yes. And then it sets back
It
for
sets
the
back.
courtyard. And so what you're seeing on the left elevation is that elevation there.
Okay, so the units all have windows on that side. Is that a brick construction? What's the
That's correct.
facade?
That's correct. Yeah, this would be a running bond
Uh-huh.
brick. It's that same light colored brick that's
From the other facade?
from the lot line facade.
And
correct.
they're just simple punches?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, Commissioner Mann.
Are these facades visible from somewhere?
Yeah, so these we can see here. So here you can see where that's the lot line. That's where it sets back, and then it has the L shape. So that L shape is formed by the courtyard and rear yards. And here you can see a little of that. So, and that's that light colored brick. So the light colored brick that's here folds around and folds on these two facades, and then wraps back around. You can't see it here, but wraps back around to what would be on the other lot line condition facing Canal Street.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, not seeing any. I do want to note before we go to testimony that Commissioner Chen is recused from this item. So let's move to public testimony. I have one person signed up in the room, Andrea Goldwyn, New York Landmarks Conservancy.
Good day, Chair Kersavage and Commissioners. I'm Andrea Goldwyn, speaking on behalf of the New York Landmarks Conservancy. Although we find many aspects of the proposed building appropriate for the Soho Cast Iron Historic District, the 240-foot height is a significant obstacle, as it will be, as discussed, substantially taller than all other buildings in the district, chipping away at the district contact, and if approved, it will set a precedent which others will no doubt follow. The Conservancy did not support the Soho NoHo rezoning because of concerns that it would encourage the demolition of smaller historic buildings and facilitate new, taller, bulkier construction that could disrupt the scale of the districts. Given that stance, in 2023, we were pleased to support the previous proposal for this site, noting that it had taken great strides to respect the context of Soho's streetscape. We appreciate that the new design relies on many of the concepts that successfully informed the previous one, especially at the lower floors where the existing historic structure will be renovated and the new construction reflects the historic fabric. Our concerns lie with the height. Any historic district relies on elements common to its buildings, including height, scale, massing, and materials. These establish continuity and a special sense of place. New construction within a district needs to be respectful of that context and fit in as a neighbor. This corner site at the intersection of two major streets is at the edge of the district where a building taller than neighbors would be appropriate. However, the significant height of the proposed new building draws attention away from the district in an inappropriate way. There are no buildings this tall in the Soho district. If approved, again, we're concerned about the precedent this would set. We urge the commission to work with the project team to reduce the height in a meaningful way, whether by lowering individual floors or the number of floors overall. And this would make the building a better neighbor for this historic district. Thank you for the opportunity to share the Conservancy's views.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else in the room that would like to testify? Okay, not seeing anybody. Let's move to Stephen Thompson for Zoom testimony.
Participants on Zoom who wish to speak, please select raise hand. When your name is announced, you'll be promoted to panelist. We ask you to unmute yourself, state your name for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to speak. First speaker is Chanel Spence.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, I'm Chenault Spence, Chair of CB2 Manhattan Landmarks Committee. In the initial hearing for this building, the committee suggested that the applicant consider the inclusion of infrastructure for an accessible subway entrance within the building, and we are delighted that they did so. This suggestion was made with the full understanding of the bonus bulk to which the applicant would be entitled. Our concerns and recommendations are detailed in the resolution, and I highlight the significant ones here. The height of the building is non-contextual for the neighborhood, is not in dispute, and we understand that total utilization of the zoning modifications for Soho and the transportation improvement bonus together account for the height. Our principal concerns are that the design lacks harmony with the neighborhood and accentuates rather than moderating the appearance of the height. The tall arch motif is postmodern, more suitable to Madison Avenue. No consideration was given to mediating elements such as horizontal detail and setbacks. The lot line north facade, and we assumed the east facade, which was not shown, presented a foreboding backside view to Soho, and the east especially lacking windows to the extent permitted, and it appears to have been modified in the presentation today. Finally, I quote from the resolution, and this is at the heart of the chair's questioning earlier. We ask the commission to closely examine the building in the context of the Soho cast iron district and the Canal Street to make an appropriate decision regarding its final height. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Historic Districts Council.
Good morning, this is Emma Bartley speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. The HDC Review Committee does find the proposed enlargement excessive in height. While HDC appreciates the restoration of the existing building and the effort to create an architecturally expressive addition, the proposed project appears to completely overwhelm its immediate neighbors. HDC thus urges the applicant to reduce the overall height of the addition to achieve a more contextually appropriate building for this block and the historic district. Thank you.
The next speaker will be Sean Sweeney. Right, Sean Sweeney, you can unmute yourself and begin your testimony.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, my name is Sean Sweeney. I'm the director of the Soho Alliance, a community organization founded in 1981 to represent the interests of Soho residents, small businesses, its co-op and condo owners, as well as renters, with a focus on historic preservation and zoning. We worked closely with the commission in 2009 for the Soho extension. as well as in 2007 in retaining the sculpture Forrest Myers iconic work, The Wall at 599 Broadway on Houston Street, the northern gateway to Soho. Incidentally, the commission approved on Houston Street about 20 years ago, 2 buildings, a wide street, which are only 7 stories tall, 1/3 the current proposal. Today, the commission is addressing the southern gateway to Soho. This will introduce visitors coming from the south, just as the wall does at the north. It must be in scale and context. Currently, the proposal is for 21 stories. The median height of buildings in Soho is 6 stories. In Broadway, it is 5 to 7, 11 stories maximum. The zoning for accessibility provides a maximum additional FAR of 1.94. But this bonus applies citywide, where land values are much less, $500 a square foot. So a small lot in an outer borough might require the maximum FAR to pay for the transit elevator. However, this lot is 7,900 square foot. Real estate websites state that the average built square footage in Soho, including a building just further down Canal Street on West Broadway owned by this company, is $2,100 a square foot. So this 34,000 additional square footage that the company wants at $2,100 a square foot represents a yield of $71.4 million. At CB2, the developer stated the cost would be about $10 million for the elevator. If the full request were granted, that leaves the developer with a windfall profit of over $61 million. So what would it cost? How much square footage does he actually need to pay for the elevator? At $2,100 a square foot, about 5,000 square feet would cover $10 million. This lot is 7,900 square feet. The additional 8 stories are just pure profit at the expense of other property owners in the neighborhood. The zoning bonus is intended to
I'm so sorry, we're past the 3-minute time limit.
Thank you,
If you
sir.
could conclude.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. The next speaker will be Christina Conroy.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Christina Conroy for the Victorian Society in New York. Now, the applicant's assertion that a building lacks historical significance because it does not match the style of a specific neighborhood is both incorrect and contrary to good preservation practice. Now, preservation means just that, preserving a building as it existed at the time of its construction. And while this building on Canal Street has certainly gone through renovations in the past century since its construction, none so irrevocably altered its form as the applicant's proposal seeks to. Historic districts are designated to protect their architectural character. Now, changing this into a 21-story building not only significantly alters this building, it also changes the neighborhood and its historic scale. A building that is indeed part of the context of the neighborhood where it resides, and using proposers' logic, their extension would completely change that neighborhood itself. The previous proposal reached what was then the considered limit of height that could be considered contextual, and this one far exceeds that. Nor do we find examples of other buildings in Soho with large additions at all convincing a relative. These additions were early and not subject to historic preservation review. Nonetheless, they resulted in buildings that were unified and often beautiful. Unlike the earlier approval for this site, the proposed design is less cohesive, besides being grossly overscaled for the district. Now, ultimately, we testify against the extreme vertical extension of this building. It's worth noting that the zoning change which allows this proposal is completely irrelevant to the issue of architectural and historical appropriateness. Preservation advocates oppose the rezoning for the very reasons we see today, that it would put added pressure on this commission to approve outsized buildings. Just because it's allowed doesn't make it appropriate. The proposed building doesn't pass the most basic test of appropriateness, which is scale. Thank you, commissioners.
The next speaker is Pete Davies.
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. My name is Pete Davies. I'm a resident of Soho and a member of the Broadway Residents Coalition, a volunteer group of Soho neighbors who works hard to preserve the beautiful Soho cast iron historic districts, a place of unique qualities that draws people from around the world. Soho deserves and needs your attention. I'm here today to state points of opposition to the new development plan for 277 Canal Street. Others have already testified to a number of things that are included in my written testimony that I have submitted, and that includes a grouping of images comparing the 2023 and the 2026 plan, showing the excessive height, the loss of affordable units percentage-wise, and the unprecedented impact on the Broadway streetscape. To be clear, we support more affordable units. We support transportation improvements with the addition of the ADA accessibility, but that needs to be incorporated so the new building doesn't overwhelm Soho and undermine the integrity of the precious resource that is the Soho Cast Iron Historic District. Simply put, this new plan is too large for the Soho Historic District and will rise nearly 50 feet above even the tallest Soho buildings. The size and the facade design now presented are out of character for this district. Finally, from New York City planning, I draw your attention to a Soho NoHo rezoning fact sheet, which notes this for new developments. Within historic districts, review from the Landmarks Preservation Commission further ensures the character and feel of new developments are consistent with the character of the neighborhood. With that, we urge the commissioners to use your knowledge and your expertise and to constrain the developer's new plan for 277 Canal in a manner that protects and honors our unique Soho Cast Iron Historic District. Thank you very much.
The next speaker is Sherida Paulson.
Good afternoon, commissioners, and welcoming Chair Kersavage to her new role. I'm very, very pleased to see this. I'm actually here to speak in favor of this proposal. Our firm was consultants to the Soho Broadway initiative during the zoning proposal for the Soho NoHo rezoning. We actually excluded this particular site from our recommendations, which generally opposed much of what was being proposed by city planning, as we felt that it could harm some of the interior portions of the district. But we do believe that this corner lot is a different location and does allow for a building of greater height. Of course, it's up to you as the commissioners to decide what that total height is. But I think that the design of the building is improved from what was approved in 2023. I think this is a very sensitive design. I'm glad to see that the lot line walls have been modified slightly. And I support this and hope you will approve it. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are any other members of the public joining via Zoom who wish to speak, please raise your hand. Right, the next speaker is Harrison Cole.
Hello, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Hello, my name is Harrison Cole. I'm a resident of Lower Manhattan, and I just wanted to join this meeting to speak in favor of this new building. I believe that we have a generational housing shortage in New York City, and the current lot existing as 3 stories with a mattress store on the bottom doesn't meet the needs. Given the city council and the mayor's goal and the rezoning to increase the housing supply, and as well as the developer's clear intention to meet the character of the neighborhood with what I believe to be a beautiful building, I hope that the commission approves this project as presented and not delay this anymore by years and years as it's been by sending this back for minor revisions. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you. Do we have any other Zoom participants wishing to speak? Please raise your hand. All right, seeing none, I'll know for the record that LPC received written testimony from the following organizations. In opposition, we had testimony from the Bowery Alliance of Neighbors and Preserve Our Brooklyn Neighborhoods. And in favor, we received testimony from the Association for Better New York and Riders Alliance. In addition, 90 individuals submitted testimony recommending denial and 2 individuals recommending approval.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to respond to the testimony?
I would very much. Thank you. So I think I outlined all the reasons why I think the height is appropriate for this corner. In terms of the design, I tend to agree with Sherrod. I think this is an improvement from the last go around, much more cohesive, and it's a very clear diagram. A marriage of sorts between the old building and the new, and sort of weaving them together. And it tells the story of the place, growing from the base to the new addition. And the bulk is not a result, and maybe Ellen can speak to this more clearly, but the bulk is not a result of the city of Yes or the rezoning per se. It is a transit bonus. That's the vast majority of what's happening on the site is the 20% increase resulting from the transit improvements that the developer is taking on. So that is very different than pushing the limits on what's available to zoning. There is this added incentive. The transit bonus does not require MIH because the incentive is the transit improvements. And so it is a well-balanced combination of affordable market rate and transit improved situation. And I think just in general, the conversation about it not being consistent with Soho, I think this building is an outlier, and this addition speaks directly to the very nature of the building itself, the architecture of the existing building, and finds a way of interpreting things that we see both in the building and in the district context, but in a very Morris kind of way, but also just a frankly modern assertion and intervention. And again, it's a new design, not trying to be anything that it's not. It would be the tallest building in the historic district, and it has a significance to the place and a physical relationship to other tall buildings that make it an appropriate proposal. I think, Ellen, you want to, because there was a lot of finances discussed, and maybe we want to just touch on that.
I won't go into the detail about the financing, but I want to say that this, one of the tricky things with the transit bonus and how it's been working is that it actually it's not proportional. You get a 20% bonus for a major transit improvement, and you have to demonstrate to MTA that you're doing a major transit improvement, and it's not calibrated to the size of the lot. This is actually a very small lot, And the bonus is much smaller than other zoning for accessibility bonuses because of the size of the lot. And so the bonus is much smaller, but the requirements are the same to provide a major transit improvement, and provide that, pay for it, and construct it on top of all of the other costs of a construction project building a residential building.
Commissioners, any additional questions? Vice Chair Master.
When we approved the 2023 building, which was 13 floors, did you guys maximize the FAR at that point?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Goldblum?
It's not maxed out. Sorry, it's not maxed out in terms of height. It probably could go another floor higher. It is maxed out as far as FAR. It's using the same max FAR that was available, and then it is maximizing the 20%. Correct.
Okay, thank you. So let's close the hearing. Commissioner Mahan, can you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Commissioner Wilder, will you second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed. Commissioner Goldblum, would you start the discussion?
Thanks. Yes. Okay. Really interesting project that touches on a lot of very interesting topics. And I think that one of the most, maybe the way to start it for me is Aaron threw out a lot of theories as to why this would be an appropriate development, despite obvious facts to the contrary. And one of them struck me as actually I thought-provoking and fascinating, actually, that zoning changes have formed the texture of the city, and that while our job, we're a zoning change too, I guess, we're a law change that has formed the texture of the city, but our regime interacts with that regime and others. And it's that interaction and the kind of telling of the story of the evolving of the city that is kind of our job. As I see it anyway, our job is to kind of manage that physical growth and change over time in such a way that preserves the reading of history and its layers and celebrating that history while fostering and allowing for change. So if that's my own working definition of what my job is, then you got to look at this building. I look at this building through that lens. And I think it's definitely true that to say that City of Yes and City of Yes was itself an expression of a national movement to increase housing in cities and elsewhere, and that it would be irresponsible to not recognize that we are living in a different age that has certain prerogatives that are going to affect the urban fabric. So the question is, how do you grapple with that in our context? And I think that there are cases where you have to say, no, our job is to say, do that development somewhere else. And there are other contexts where we have to say, well, how would that change of scale manifest itself in such a way that would remain historically appropriate? I think this particular project, at its scale, is appropriate. And I think that the reason for that has very much to do with the facts of the site. I think that the site, first of all, the building itself, while a building with some charm and a level of design that is not, it's not taxpayer, is definitely an outlier from the district and is is itself kind of an indicator of the variegation of the form along Canal Street. It's part of a kind of honky-tonkish rhythm that is Canal Street. So I think that the building itself can take significant modification because you're not harming a significant historic piece of fabric, and because its place is one of variation within a varied part of the city. When you stand on Canal and look around, you see tall buildings, you see low buildings, medium size, and I think that the width of Canal Street, as was raised in the presentation, was another key factor why, for me, this particular site could take a very large building. The fact that both Broadway and Canal are wide, and that they both have varied vistas as you look down them in both directions, means that a building of this scale could represent the modern moment while preserving the historic quality of the place. And I think that is tied up not only in the volume, but in the expression of that volume. I mean, had this building been mirror glass at oblique angles, I think that view would have not been the case. But I think, notable that Morris has become an adjective, and I think that the Morris version of this building is one that is generally appropriate in this location. I think that in some ways it's an improvement on the previous version. Most significantly, I think, in two ways. First of all, I think that the use of matching brick on the addition versus a kind of almost matching brick is going to yield a more successful overall construction. And second of all, the use of the strong triple height cap to the building with the arches does more strongly reference the larger buildings within the district and in the neighborhood. The industrial buildings in the late 19th, early 20th century that came after the cast iron buildings. I think that form and the use of the polychrome is more effective than the previous one. So in general, I can accept this building nearly as it is. I would, however, say that the applicant should work with the staff, if others agree, on a few things. Number one, I think that first of all, let me say about the things that I think are okay. I think the base is okay. I think the signage is a good read of the district and is okay. I think that the storefronts are okay, but I think it's a curious choice to have centered double doors for storefronts. We really don't see a lot of that, and I hope that it doesn't involve coming back at a later time when a tenant wants more storefront and less door. That would, it certainly matches the above, and I think it's appropriate, but I wonder, they should just explore that. I don't think it would be a bad thing to have a different layout as an option if retail tenants want a different layout. Because Canal and Broadway are both rather variegated, I think that there should be flexibility in that. But I think the signage approach is good. I think the storefront, the materials, the terracotta, I very much like the light bronze color for the metal. I think it will have a good effect. I think the restoration is clearly fine, the marquee, all that stuff. So a couple of things to explore with staff. Number one, the floor height increase on the upper floors, except for the top three, is gratuitous and doesn't add to the experience of the building, and probably, those extra 6 or 7 feet wouldn't hurt anybody to knock off the building. I would suggest that they regularize the floors. I think you could keep the top 3 floors to have a different height, but I don't think I think the shaft should be consistent. Number one. Number two, I think that the arches below the cap are, to me, they take away from the strength and simplicity of the building. I think that one of the qualities of the base building that is unique and important is its simplicity. It's a simple, straightforward, neo-Georgian building that represents its time, the 1920s. It's not a filigreed, lacy Victorian building. It's not a robust cast iron building. It's a simple building in a simple architectural style. And I think that the second set of arches and also that kind of odd tapering motif with the terracotta at the piers takes away from the simplicity and strength of it. And I would suggest that they explore simplifying the expression of the shaft with the staff. I do think that the top and the profiling of the arches is quite nice and would result in a good effect. So and I think that the lot line walls are great. I think it's a very appropriate and historically grounded way to deal with large side walls that are blank. And I think that the courtyard facades are simple and straightforward.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Mahan.
Thank you. And really interesting to hear my fellow commissioners' comments as well. So pretty interesting application. I of course, was not a commissioner the first time this site was seen. So I have, I suffer from lacking that context, but also have the benefit of a bit of distance in that regard. I'll just note, it's an interesting starting point, starting from this existing building and using it kind of as the architectural DNA for a new building. It's, quite an outlier and not the most perhaps architecturally distinguished, building in Soho. And in that regard, I would say this new proposal is an improvement. It goes further to transform in creative and contemporary ways the architectural DNA of the historic building. That being said, I think that's really not the main issue here. I think the main issue, of course, is scale and height. And, somewhat curiously, I found the preponderance of the presentation really to focus on, the details of the facade, which, this capable architect, I think, is obviously able to handle with aplomb. I'm not opposed to height in and of itself, to new buildings in historic districts or significant and bold additions. But this new proposal looks so much taller than the previous proposal. And honestly, I had a hard time following exactly how that occurred. It was stated at one point only 3 floors are added. That's, clearly not the case. Is it 50 feet taller, 80 feet taller? The floor to floor has changed. So, it was a little bit difficult to follow exactly how and why the increase occurred. I can appreciate, that the applicant decided really to go all in on verticality architecturally, right? So the building, objectively got taller. But the applicant chose, in addition to that, to emphasize and amplify that verticality. The slab covers are more recessive. The arches, emphasize verticality. The device of the gradient emphasizes verticality. And so I appreciate the kind of self-confident aspect of the architectural proposal. But I'm personally not yet comfortable with the height and scale. And I would say the applicant, as Commissioner Goldblum noted, stated verbally many possible justifications for appropriateness. These two streets are a kind of scar. They're both wide. They feature new buildings, building fragments. There are tall buildings at the corners. It's the edge of the district. There are tall buildings to the south in adjacent historic districts. What is the context beyond the historic district? All these things sound convincing, and they may in fact be persuasive arguments for appropriateness. I did not see them demonstrated in the visuals of the presentation. And that to me is the major issue of this proposal, not the details of the facade. So there could have been, if those things are true, a tremendous amount more mapping, visualizations, elevations, studies. You know, why is this scale appropriate here? And so I was left wanting for you know, sort of demonstration and justification of the appropriateness of the scale.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Wilder?
Thank you. Thanks to the applicant for presentation. I too was not here for the first application, so I'm seeing the project for the first time. I agree in terms of the original building restoration. I think it is a good job done there, and I agree with the direction. I think different directions could have been done using this space or altering it in any kind of way. I'm fine with the relocation of the subway. I think it makes sense. I like the design of the and clever at the same time. Two, trying to understand the kind of outlier quality of the building and how it reflects in the scale of the building, and looking at the various heights of the surrounding area. I think I was just trying to find a reason to accept the height and scale, and I think it is possible for it to be taller than some of the other buildings, but in a lot of cases it's double the height, and it just doesn't. I don't necessarily think that it's the precedent that needs to be set, because other sites or other locations, and I know it doesn't necessarily matter for this, but they may not have that necessarily outlier position as this one, but could potentially try to take advantage of that. And I just don't think that the height of this building is enough to create a trend where taller buildings like this are acceptable in this area, in this context. Overall, I think the rest of the design, I think, are acceptable and quite pleasant, but I do think the building overall needs to come down.
Vice Chair Master?
Yeah, this is a really tough one. I remember the 2023 approval, and I remember thinking that the wide base and then the wide streets of Broadway and Canal justified the height, which was 13 stories. And I thought that the massing, was appropriate at that point. But then we're kind of going from something that's 145 feet to something that's, I think, 240 feet. And I guess initially my thought was, wow, that's a really tall building that we're replacing the 13-story with something that's, I guess, 21 stories. And I kind of agree with Frank that that's really the crux of this. It's the vertical height. And I feel like that's really what should have been emphasized rather than the design. And that's why I kept asking questions about it, because that's really, you know, given that I know it's on the boundary of a historic district, and I know that there's other buildings in the neighborhood being built and, you know, that exist that might be comparable or taller in height. But for me, that really needs to be emphasized, especially given that going through the public testimony, there were a lot of concerns, I think, with community groups and then individuals about the height of something like this going into the Soho Historic District. So I think it would have been nice to really beef up that part of the presentation. So kind of going through the arguments that Erin had sent, saying that, you know, it's the boundary of the historic district. That makes sense to me. It's a Broadway corner. Yes. Canal and Broad Street are wide streets. Yeah. And I think that justified the 13-floor building. And then there's taller buildings to the south. The other thing that she said to me that struck me, which as it struck Commissioner Goldblum, was that the zoning changes and that we meet the needs of the community at a specific time. And I actually found that very compelling, that at this time, part of our job is, in addition to protecting the historic district, is also to consider the needs of the city, which is housing and affordable housing. And I found that very compelling. So what I would say is, I think that a taller building here could certainly be justified, but I'm not sure that we have the story yet to justify it. So, and I like what you said about the zoning changes and that the needs of the city, and I'm more than willing to be flexible and say, hey, even if it's taller than anything else in this historic district, I'm willing to listen to the story that you tell. But I think we do need a little bit more justification here.
Commissioner Ginsburg?
Thank you. In general, I agree with Commissioner Goldblum. First of all, I have to say, how did you get a shot of Canal Street with so few cars? Because I have really, I live near Canal Street and it's always filled with cars, particularly in daylight, maybe at 1 in the morning or something. There is a deal here which is tied to what we're looking at, which is the deal is we'll give you improved transit accessibility in return for FAR and height. And that is something, from what I understand, the community wanted the accessibility, but may not want the height, which is an interesting discussion. And our area of looking at is really, is the height appropriate given the historic district? And I agree with Commissioner Goldblum. In general, I think it is. I think you could lower the floor to floor except for in the crown, so they're all consistent, which lowers the building a bit. I also think the details are very nice, and particularly as the building gets taller, it gets lighter in a very different way. The building that I'll call the Ghostbuster building on Central Park West does a similar thing in a change of brick, and it tends to make the building lighter, and I appreciate that. I would also agree with Commissioner Goldblum. This is not a neighborhood of consistent heights. You know, if this were Park Avenue with a consistent cornice height, it'd be a very different situation than here, that even just looking without, sort of blocking out the new building, you've got a real variety of heights. And if you look up Broadway, it's even more varied. And then finally, I think the signage plan is really pretty good compromise of creating some consistency within the chaos that is Canal Street and which one would like to preserve. So I in general could find this appropriate and can approve this.
Okay, Commissioner Aquembe.
Definitely a very interesting project with a lot of parts to it. Um, First of all, I compliment the applicant for, I guess, making a bold move and attempting to give justification for those moves. Um, First of all, with the site being the site, definitely two wide streets, Canal and Broadway, definitely a great entry area. Also a very prominent street, corner to work with. It's interesting, the building that was there presently really didn't contribute much to the district, nor in its style, nor in its scale. But actually coming to a point of actually transforming it to something new is a very interesting concept. Other factors dealing with the barrier-free bonuses provided by the MTA actually increases the amount of interest of this site as well. And it's something that not only does it give to the district itself, but also to the city as a whole. And with all that, we're working with the existing context of the district. A lot of moving parts, like I said before. Very interesting culmination. So we're taking a collection of seemingly disjointed parts and trying to come up with a remedy that actually makes a product in which we'll be proud with. I believe there are a lot of portions of what is presented that I find favorable. I do believe that the building can have an extended height, and most likely it could be the tallest building in the district. If this is the height, I'm not exactly sure. I do believe that the floor-to-floor heights, especially in the shaft, I believe, which was stated, should be regularized. The crown can definitely read its own expression and also give some homage to the existing district itself. The move of the facade is interesting, but it also accentuates the verticality of the building. If that's really what it wants to do, then I say do it. But I guess I'm still, there are many things working. The comment about how this is actually part of a living system, and the city in itself it's transformative in nature. Definitely a great comment, and I believe it to be true as well. Where I struggle is at what point and how far do we go? So it's potential that maybe this would be appropriate, absolutely in 100 years compared to where we are now. Overall, in saying I am in alignment with a building of this type, I just question the height.
Commissioner Chu.
Yeah, listening to all the comments, and I agree with many of them from both perspectives and support and proposal. I think that the design itself is appropriate. I appreciate the level of detail and attention to the materials, to the smaller scale elements. I especially appreciate the sense of depth that reflects the historic building at the base, so that it doesn't feel like the new construction is flat and cheaper. I think that there is quality demonstrated in this design proposal that is based in materiality, which I think the decision to do a new building addition that takes its design origin from the historic building is an appropriate decision. I would have considered well. I think the one that was done is appropriate. I tend to agree with some of the comments being made. I mean, the big issue here is we've all identified is scale. I think that the building, its mission, I very much support. I love that it is a transit center. The way that this proposal is really, this has now become a landmark building. It is a destination in terms of its mass. It is definitely it's a focus of attention visually. The general district has a sense of more sky exposure plane. There's a sense of sky and view, and the buildings tend to be a lower rise, 5-6 story general mass. The location of this is unique. I think that a corner building that is taller as opposed to what's there right now is appropriate and preferred to mark this very wide intersection and hub, transit hub. I look at the scale and I keep trying to block out floors with my finger on the renderings to see what I think. And I think that the applicant has made a case to me that a building of this scale belongs in this area. I just keep coming back to the same question my fellow commissioners have is, does that make it appropriate for a historic district? And I keep coming back to that point. I think that the design is very clever and that it in some ways lightens its facade approach as it goes up. And I think it's quite nice. I think it's a handsome design. I just feel that it is too tall. And the reason I will say that is because being a part of the historic district, I think we need to review proposals to see how they can either augment the presence and what is characteristic of the district or in some way represent a future development in a historic district that we are approving of and feel are a good direction for increase in mass. I also think that the use of it as housing is a positive thing. I think that this is something we're going to see a lot more of. My question is, does the housing problem have to be solved in one building? I think the intent is that it is a universal increase in mass that maybe is a more incremental and sensitive approach to its context. In this case, it is a perfectly fine design for a building, I think, in New York City. I look at the previous proposal, the current one, and I think what happened is that it went from a scale and height that to me felt that the district could sustain as potentially one of the tallest buildings in the district and actually marking the start of the district really at this corner. However, the current mass just appears from the representation and the design that is really more of icon in itself and has reached a height that has lost my sense of relationship to scale. The base is restored. I think it's great. I love that there's a subway there. I think that all works when you're sort of down low, but as you look up, the impact, I think right now I'm feeling like it could lose 3 floors. I know it increased, maybe be 6. I could consider an option that was taller than the previous proposal, which I thought was quite appropriate in mass, and that's why it was more or less universally approved. This one, I guess I'm not ready for it. I feel like I need a little bit more, like my fellow commissioners have stated, more convincing and a story that really gives us a sense that this is appropriate for the district.
Okay, Commissioner Jefferson.
I think the architects did an incredible job in the design of this building. It's a simple building, but the details are complex. I mean, I haven't seen such complex details vertically put in a building before. I accept the height of the building in its context because the corner building and all the urban issues that we talked about, the other commissioners talked about, I think it visually from several angles, it relates well to other taller buildings that are slightly out of the historic district. But by visually seeing the gestalt of that makes it appropriate for me. And I think this is a new time, and we have to start to accept that some issues have to change in historic districts. However, there is one issue here is the floor-to-floor ratio, the floor-to-floor heights. And I think they have to restudy that. I don't see the reason. I do know the reason, but I don't think it's required in this building to have the higher floor, the height of the floor changing. I think if they selected 11 feet or 10 feet would be fine. I think the transit bonus makes total sense. I mean, everything here makes rational sense to me, except the floor-to-floor heights, and I can accept this proposition.
Okay, thank you. So I think you've heard, many positive comments today. You've heard from 3 commissioners who could support this if there is a change in the floor-to-floor heights. But we don't have enough for a vote. I think you've heard from others that just overall that struggling with the height. So, what I would recommend is coming back with, maybe further, rationale on that height in this district and or, considering lowering the height. But I think overall, there is a lot of positive comments on the design overall. So I think it's, and the, great to add housing, the MTA, a lot of positive comments about that, but it's really a struggle with the height for some commissioners. Okay, thank you.
All right, so we'll take no action on that item today, and please work with staff as you prepare to come back for a future date. We are ahead of schedule, so we're going to pull one item that was scheduled for after lunch to do that before our lunch break, and do that now. It's public hearing item number 4, LPC 26-10340, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 498, Lot 23, 529 Broadway in the Soho Cast Iron Historic District. This is a commercial building recently constructed in 2017, and the application is to replace ground floor infill.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Alex Caballero, and I'm a principal at Arcadis, and we are the architects for the project. The ownership is Inca Investments, and they are the new owners of 529 Broadway. So the proposal that we bring to the commission today is to do a limited intervention, modifications to a single storefront on the Spring Street side of the building. So a little bit of history on the building, and we are having some technical difficulty bringing the ownership into the call. He's calling in from the UK, so hopefully he will be available when we get to questioning. And so I'll represent the comments of ownership. So the building site is within the Soho Cast Iron Historic District. It's on the corner, the northwest corner of Broadway and Spring Street. And some history on the current iteration of the building. So the building as it exists today was actually approved by this commission in 2013. And it was approved in 2013. The final submission to the DOB was in September of 2016, and the tenant who occupied the entirety of the building when it opened in November of 2016 was Nike. And so this was the Nike Soho flagship store, and they occupied the entirety of the upper portion of the building and the cellar as well. The proposal that is in front of the commission today is related to a modification to the building to modify its current use from 100% occupied by a retail tenant to having the cellar, ground, and second floors occupied by retail tenancies, and then the upper floors converted to office use. And so to bring it more into alignment with the more typical commercial uses of a building of this scale within the district. And this, of course, and here I'm speaking on behalf of the ownership, this is to work towards the long-term economic viability of the building. The ownership is Inca Investments. It's actually the investment arm of IKEA. They are long-term owners. They are looking to own the building for decades. And so their interest here is in being long-term good building owners. So the the building as it stands is unique in the sense that it is entirely new construction, and it's a large project, large new building at that. This is the current existing montage of the building facade, full elevation on Spring Street. And so we see that the character of the building is very commercial. The building, as it was approved, actually has larger windows towards Broadway that then become a more solid facade as it carries down Spring Street towards the west. And so the character of the building is entirely commercial in nature. The portion of storefront that is proposed to be altered is the lower left-hand corner of this photograph, and we have before and after images later in the deck. And so the existing storefront there is actually the rear building entry. And as you can see, the sidewalk on Spring Street slopes down from Broadway. So it is tallest at Broadway and then slopes down slightly over 3 feet to arrive at the street sidewalk level at the existing building entry on Spring Street. So the existing floor plate of the building in its current iteration, which is 100% a single retail tenant, is as is shown on screen, with the primary entrance on Broadway, and then the second rear entrance on Spring Street in the lower left-hand corner. And it's this rear entrance that is proposed to be modified along with the insertion on the interior of a compact new building lobby. So in order to provide access to the upper floor tenants, which are office tenants, the proposal is to modify the westernmost storefront bay into an entry storefront that combines access and egress to the new building lobby with freight elevator access for the retail tenant. So it's a very compact footprint that takes into account as well the change in grade in order to come up over 3 feet to the existing building slab level at ground level on Broadway. And so the existing building facade is as shown on screen, and the proposed modification area is outlined in red. And that proposal is now shown on screen. And so on screen, you see that it is a tightly delimited modification that is being proposed, affecting only that storefront bay on Spring Street. So the existing condition on Spring Street is that we see the single swing door that is set back from the building lot line and from the building existing facade. And it's recessed back from the street with an outswing, partial outswing over the sidewalk, as is allowed by code. And on the left-hand side is the existing floor plan of that entrance, showing that that single door currently functions as rear building entry, second means of egress, and access to the retail freight elevator. On the right-hand side is that storefront as it was filed in 2016. And so we think that in 2016, what was contemplated was the rear door as shown, and then side street signage, which is not currently installed over that rear door. The proposed storefront modification now would be to take that single storefront and to create an office entry segregated from the retail freight elevator access. And so the left-hand plan shows that the proposal is to, for the benefit of the office, to install a revolving door, which is set at the building lot line with no portion of it protruding beyond the building lot line, and a single swing door which would function as building egress and ADA access. And then on the right-hand side, double swing doors, which would segregate the retail tenant freight elevator access from the office tenant building access. The swing doors here are proposed to be set back further from the lot line. So we are proposing to set them back 2 ft 5 in, which is deeper than required by code, in cognizance that Spring Street is a busy sidewalk. On the right hand, we see that the modification would be limited to the storefront that is within the exterior pilasters and the exterior facade panels, and that we start to see that the modification would be a lower portion of the storefront for the new entries, and an upper portion which is a transom, which would be to match the existing building fenestration. In rendered view, it starts to be clear that our proposal is to actually take the existing modules and character of the building, the lines of the base of the building, the existing glazed terracotta panels, the existing lines of fenestration, and to carry these over onto the new overhang and the new metal panels, which would be over the freight entrance. So the proposed material palette would be very restrained. It is essentially where we are infilling to match the existing building fenestration and the transom. We would match the existing window framing and returns to match the existing bronze powder coat finish in the building, and then upgrade that finish for all new elements for the building entry proper. And so an overhang, the metal panels over the freight doors, and the framing to the revolver and swing door would all be in an actual bronze plated finish on steel. So this would be a bronze plating on steel in a brushed antiqued finish. So from the facade point of view, the materials start to become the bronze plated finish, the powder coat to match the existing building fenestration, a white translucent film over the clear glass over the glass transom panels, because this becomes a spandrel condition with the building ceiling. Pendant stainless steel signage with the side street 95 spring. And I mentioned the bronze framing to the windows, which are low iron clear glass. And then at the threshold in front of the swing doors, a threshold in white quartzite slab. So in elevation view, we see that on the upper right-hand side is the existing building facade. Lower left-hand side is the proposed new entry. We start to see that it is furthest away from Broadway, down the side street. And then a rendered view, more from the Broadway side. Upper right-hand side, we see the existing condition of the of that storefront bay, and then the proposed modification on the lower left, with the freight doors in the solid bronze panels, and the office entry in bronze framed clear glass. Here we start to see that the strikes on the seaming on the panels and the hairline strikes on the face of the panels themselves echo the existing glazed terracotta paneling on the building, and that the overhang, which is a 1-foot overhang as allowed, the seaming on the overhang echoes the fenestration pattern on the windows above. And then a view tilted more towards the Mercer Street side of the building of that same proposed storefront. So here clearly we see that no portion of the revolver or swing doors actually goes beyond the lot line. The only element would be the overhang with signage. So looking at precedents to the revolver, we took note that 686 Broadway, which is in the NoHo Historic District, approved by this commission in 2019, has a very similar bronze framed revolver condition. We believe that the revolver condition is also because of a constrained entry condition to the space beyond. And then really the modules of the facade, the articulation of the bronze panels and of the overhang are really taken from the modules and articulation of the existing facade proper. And so in detail section, drawing sections through the revolver, drawing sections through the swing door, showing the setback of the swing doors 2 foot 5 inches from lot line, and that no portion extends beyond lot line except for the overhang, and then in detail section as well. And so the overhang would really be a signage position for the side street denoted signage of 95 Spring, and for it would be unlit signage, and then the overhang would be a signage positions for the building entry to increase the brightness around the building entry. I'm just going to check and see if the building ownership is on. Okay, so Tim Farlam is on. Tim, would you like to say a word? Okay, so Tim was
Seems like
trying
we
to
might
call.
be having some technical issues here.
Yep, sorry.
Why don't we?
Hello, my name's Tim Farlam. Hello, Commissioners. 59 Broadway. Inca Group doors, including 59 for me.
Yes, we can hear you.
So you can't hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. You may continue.
You can hear me. Sorry, apologies for that, Commissioners. I'm Tim Farlam from Inca Investments, our new building ownership at 59 Broadway. Inca Group, as you may know, is the largest IKEA franchise in the world with over 400 stores, including 59 outlets in the USA. And Inca Investments is the investment arm of the group. We've bought the building, as Alex said, as a long-term holding, a commitment to both Soho and New York, bringing IKEA's affordable home furnishings to the heart of the city. Retail, as Alex said, doesn't work on 6 levels. Therefore, the plan for this relatively new building is to follow a more normal Soho use pattern and repurpose the upper parts of the building as high-quality offices. The new entrance on Spring Street is needed for the long-term economic viability of the building and needs to be of quality to attract occupiers seeking high
You know, I'm sorry, you're breaking up as you move along, so I think we should probably just move forward with testimony.
Thank you.
Or actually, let's
Apologies.
start with, okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Um,
Yeah, so Tim is in the
Commissioners-
UK, is in a car, and therefore is on the wrong side of the road.
Okay. Commissioners, do we have any questions? Commissioner Jefferson?
Where was the loading dock before?
So the building construction was completed in 2016. And so it's entirely new construction from 2016.
Where was the loading dock?
The loading door is actually in the same location. So if I scroll back to the existing condition, so in this photograph on the upper right-hand side, the door that you see in the upper right-hand side photo in the lower, right there in the corner, that is the loading door. So the current freight door is also the building access door and a building and a second means of egress. Correct.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ginsburg?
Would it be possible to push the revolving door drum back so that instead of the drum projecting out from the facade, it was flush with the facade? Or are there physical reasons why you couldn't do that?
It would be possible. It would be possible to, I think, do a combination of two things. One would be to push the drum back a bit and then to pull the doors forward a bit. The doors as proposed are set further back than code actually requires. And it's very tight and constrained on the inboard side of the plan. So some combination, I think, of pulling the revolver back, but pulling the doors forward, I think would be feasible.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions? Commissioner Chen?
So how much of a give would that give you?
Well, currently the doors are set at 2 foot 5 inches from the lot line. And so if we were to pull them forward to 1 foot 10, we would look to pull back the revolver an equivalent amount. Our concern, we'd like to have the doors, set back a bit from the street, acknowledging that we're going to have traffic on Spring Street, pedestrian traffic on Spring Street. And that was the impetus to pull the doors back 2 foot 5 inches.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, not seeing any. Let's move to testimony. Is there anybody? No, so there's nobody in the room to testify. So we'll turn to Stephen Thompson for Zoom testimony.
Participants on Zoom wishing to speak, please raise your hand. The first speaker will be Chenault Spence.
I'm Chenault Spence, Chair of the Landmarks Committee for Community Board 2 Manhattan. The service entrance is being made to be the principal entrance for a rather large building, and the attendant difficulties of design are evident. The revolving door is not suitable to Spring Street. The narrow street requires that all of the doors swing is within the property line. The laminated freight door appears fake, and a simpler design that acknowledges what it is would be more appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other participants on Zoom wishing to speak? Please raise your hand. All right, that concludes the testimony.
Okay, would you like to respond to any of the comments that you heard in testimony?
Yes, we think that the proposal of putting the metal panels over the freight doors allows us to extend the building's character into the new storefront, as well as providing durability to the metal paneling, to the freight doors, and that the character of the building entry is in keeping with the proposed office uses. It's a high-end office building. It would be a boutique building in Soho. And so from a functionality, energy code, and usability point of view, we would suggest that the revolver and the door are optimal.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any final questions? Not seeing any. Let's close the hearing. Commissioner Chu, can you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Commissioner Quimby, can you second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The hearing is closed. Commissioner Jefferson, would you start the discussion?
Sure. I mean, it's a very interesting building. I would call it mannerist with the way they goes from heavy to light. It's really quite fantastic facade. I think this facade works, but the issue for me is that the three-dimensional quality of it doesn't quite work with the opening. And I think the suggestion that the architect made that it should be pushed back perhaps deeper, and the door comes out and the rotating door pushed back might be a solution for solving this problem. I think he should study this with staff and see what kind of solution can be worked out.
Commissioner Chu.
I think this is a very simple update to an existing building. They're recomposing what's in an existing archway frame. I'm okay with what's being proposed. I think this is a public front door and it needs to express so. Right now, it looks very back of house on the facade. It's pretty flat and engages the streetscape. I'm good with this. This is appropriate to me.
Okay, Commissioner Quimby.
I find it to be an acceptable solution for the change of use within the building. I believe it's very modest and it keeps in tune with the existing, I guess, articulation of this facade, and also taking note of the width of the street and the possible pedestrian access.
Commissioner Chen.
I also agree with most of the comments. I think this is the articulation as it stands is fine. I leave it up to the rest of the commissioner to see whether you want to set it back.
Commissioner Ginsburg.
I tend to think that pushing the drum back a bit and pulling the wall forward a bit, maybe not totally reducing the drum's projection would be positive, but I can live with this basically this way too. But I'd probably prefer that.
Vice Chair Master.
Yeah, I can find this appropriate as presented. I think it's very modest and I think it blends in well with the rest of the building.
Commissioner Wilder.
Yeah, I think it's an overall appropriate alteration to the facade. I'm not sure if it's the perfect solution in terms of how far the revolving door should be, but I can find this as presented acceptable.
Commissioner Mahan.
I think it's appropriate as is. I would note that the swing door probably is not intended to have a push bar on the exterior, so the applicant should just review that.
Commissioner Goldblum.
I agree. I think it's appropriate as is. I think it would be better pushed in, but I'm okay with it.
In the matter of LPC 26-10340, 529 Broadway, application is to replace ground floor infill. I recommend approval, finding that the project work at this modern building would not eliminate any significant architectural features, that the presence of infill at the end bay, which differs from the infill at the remainder of the facade in terms of composition and recessed placement, will be in keeping with secondary entrance found at buildings throughout the historic district, that the proposed infill will be well scaled to the bay, aligned with the modular patterns of the facade, and that the facade and throughout the historic district. That the proposed infill will be well scaled to the bay, aligned with modular panel facade, and feature details compatible with the design of the building. That the resolving doors will help support energy efficiency and is consistent with the modernity of the building design. That the proposed material and finishes of the bronze plate infill, bronze painted frame elements, and clear and translucent glazing will be consistent with the materials and finish palette of the building, maintaining the unity of the building. That the modestly sized and simple design canopy will be compatible with the industrial character of the historic district and will not call undue attention to itself in the streetscape. That the signage will be well scaled to the bay, simply designed and typical in placement, material, and finish. And that the limited installation of quartzite paving in front of the recessed infill will recall the presence of the historic granite paving found throughout the historic district in a contemporary way and without detracting from the unity of the streetscape paving.
Thank you. Commissioner Goldblum, will you second the motion?
Second.
Okay, and Mark, could you please call the vote?
Chair Savage,
Aye.
Commissioner Master,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Chu. Not here. Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum,
Aye.
Commissioner Quimby,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Mahan,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilder.
Aye.
With 9 in favor and none opposed, the motion passes.
Okay, thank you. That's been approved. So this concludes the morning session, and we're going to break for lunch. It's 12:40 right now, so we will return at 1:10 and resume the afternoon session. We will ask all members of the public on Zoom to voluntarily exit at this time so that you don't experience technical difficulties returning to the afternoon session that may arise if we remove you from the meeting.